Chapter 333. In the end, the 3 school bags that Xia Dong had prepared for the children were left at home. The little guys dragged their small suitcases to the school gate to wait for the school bus. Many parents reluctantly accompanied and escorted them. Xia Dong was also one of them. Xia Dong did not know that while she was worried about the children, Bailey Han had already made arrangements. The school attached great importance to the safety of this activity. Even the location of the spring outing was only known to a few people, including the principal. This was to prevent the location from being leaked and attracting the attention of criminals. After all, these children were from wealthy families. If 1 or 2 of them were kidnapped, the school would be finished. The principal planned to hire bodyguards with excellent martial arts from a professional bodyguard company to protect the children's safety. Bailey Han got wind of this and personally went to the school to talk to the principal, expressing his willingness to sponsor the accompanying bodyguards. He had heard of financial and material sponsorship, but had never heard of manpower sponsorship. Although the principal was surprised, he still accepted Bailey Han's sponsorship because he knew that Bailey's bodyguards were very powerful. Therefore, Bailey Han transferred 10 brothers from the Dragon Gang to disguise as security guards to accompany the school bus and protect the children on the outing. The school bus slowly came and stopped at the school gate. This was a luxurious minibus. Including the driver, there were exactly 20 seats. The teacher had arranged the numbers in advance and let the children get on the bus according to the numbers. The parents helped them put their luggage into the car's suitcase. Xiao Yi and her siblings sat in the middle. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao were in a row. Xiao Guai and another girl sat in front of her brothers. Xia Dong carefully adjusted their seat belts and then told them one by one, "You Gigai kids don't quarrel. Take care of each other, okay?" Xiao Guai kissed her cheek. "Okay, Mommy." Xiao Yi was the eldest. She patted her chest. "Mommy, don't worry. I will take good care of my brother and sister." Xiao Bao said, "Mom, don't worry. We're just going out to play. Nothing will happen." The school bus was about to start, so Xia Dong and the other parents were forced to get off. She noticed that there was a black Mercedes-Benz in front and behind the school bus. When a Mercedes-Benz in the back passed in front of her, a head suddenly popped out of the window and chuckled at her. "Young madam," Xia Dong was stunned. It was not until the 3 cars were far away that she realized that the man in the security uniform was Ah Bao. It must be Ah Bao. No wonder Bailey Han was so calm. He had already arranged everything. She suddenly felt like she had been played by her husband. Tears welled up in his eyes. Bailey Han was working in his office when his phone rang. It was a terrifying ringtone. "My wife is calling. My wife is calling." He smiled and put the phone to his ear. "Wifey." Then came the sound of gnashing teeth. "Bailey Han, you're in big trouble." He laughed. "You found out," she said angrily. "Why did you hide it from me?" He laughed even more happily. "I like to see you busy like a headless fly." "Oh, I'm going crazy." "You're still laughing. Do you have fun teasing me?" A certain someone was already in a state of rage. He was laughing so hard that he was almost out of breath. "Wifey, you ahem, calm down. When we get home tonight, I'll let you do whatever you want with me. Just you wait. I won't let you off." Xia Dong rubbed his chin and seriously considered whether he should use chili water or tiger stool. Bailey Han, "Honey, you're too bloody and violent." After driving for more than an hour, the school bus from Imperial Kindergarten stopped at a small village about 50 kilometers away from City A. Many of the villagers in this village were working in the city, and there were only the elderly, women, and children left in the family. The culture of the villagers was also relatively simple. The school had already communicated with the village chief and rented 10 houses from 10 families for the children and teachers to stay in. As for the bodyguards, they would also sleep on the floor in the children's houses to make it easier for them to protect them. There were a total of 20 children, 9 girls and 11 boys. Because Bailey Han had specially informed the school, the teacher arranged for Xiao Yi and her siblings to stay in the same homestay. There were 8 girls and 9 boys left, 2 girls to a room and 3 boys to a room. There was a bodyguard in each room to ensure their safety. Ah Bao was responsible for Xiao Yi and her siblings' safety. The children in the kindergarten were not surprised to see the bodyguards because they all had many bodyguards at home. When they went to and from school, They were also protected by bodyguards. However, Xiao Guai and her siblings were different because their bodyguards were old acquaintances. Xiao Guai quietly tugged at Xiao Yi's sleeve and whispered, "Brother Yi, that bodyguard looks like Uncle Bao." Xiao Yi whispered in her ear, "It doesn't look like him. He is Uncle Bao." Oh, why is Uncle Bao here?" The little cutie blinked her eyes in confusion. The smart Xiao Yi thought for a moment, then puffed up her cheeks and said, "Because these bodyguards were sent by Daddy." "Ah, Daddy is so awesome." Xiao Guai's eyes were filled with admiration. "Sure, don't be so loud. Don't tell anyone. This is a secret, okay?" Xiao Bao suddenly came over and bared his teeth at the two of them. Okay, children. Now that you have checked your rooms, please hand over all your snacks, toys, and phones." There were two kindergarten teachers who came with them this time. One was called Ding Lin, and the other was called Yu Jinjin. They were both beautiful girls in their early 20s. At this moment, the one who clapped her hands and announced the rules was Ding Lin. "Oh, why? I don't want to hand over my toys. We can't hand over our phones either. I want to talk to Daddy and Mommy." Many children began to protest, but Xiao Yi and the other two did not feel any pressure. Xiao Yi raised her chin proudly and said, "Mommy is so wise not to prepare snacks and toys." Xiao Bao grinned. He would not tell Xiao Yi and Xiao Guai that he had secretly seen his mother prepare 3 big bags of things, but his father had forcibly stopped her. Although the children strongly protested, Ding Lin and Yu Zhenjin still took away their snacks and toys. 2 delicate little girls cried loudly, saying that they wanted to go home and not participate in the activity. The scene was chaotic for a moment. Fortunately, the teachers were very patient. They comforted and persuaded them to quiet down. Then Ding Lin said, "Before we confiscate your phones, you can call Daddy and Mommy to tell them that you are safe. You can't talk for more than 5 minutes." The children hurriedly made the phone calls. After Xiao Yi dialed the number, he handed the small phone to Xiao Guai like a big brother. Xiao Guai said in a childish voice, "Mommy, we are fine now. I am very obedient and I didn't cry." Okay, I know. The teacher said that you can only talk for 5 minutes. I will give the phone to my brothers." Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao also talked to Xia Dong on the phone. They manly comforted her not to worry and said that things were going smoothly. Ding Lin and Yu Zhenjin finally heaved a sigh of relief when they finally took away the children's phones. Then it was lunchtime. Everyone was given a boiled egg, a boiled potato, and a steaming hot meat bun. The children carried their lunch and returned to their little nest. Although the room was very simple, it was very clean. There was a very large wooden bed that was completely big enough for the 3 of them to lie down. The 3 children sat on small stools. Small bowls of food were placed on the small wooden table. Xiao Yi took out a stack of wet wipes from the suitcase and gave one to each child. After the 3 children wiped their hands clean, Xiao Bao picked up an egg. "Gigai, eat the meat bun first. I will peel the egg for you." "Oh!" Xiao Guai hugged the steaming hot meat bun and carefully took a bite. Her delicate brows furrowed. "It's so hot. Silly, blow it first." Xiao Yi took the meat bun from her hands and patiently helped her blow it. "Okay, you can eat now." Thank you, big brother." Although the conditions were very difficult, the children took care of each other and were very sweet. The children took an hour of lunch break. Then, the teacher took a loudspeaker and went door to door to wake them up. Some of the children were grumpy when they woke up. After they got up, they hugged their quilts and cried loudly. The teacher's hair almost turned white from worry. She didn't know if the spring outing could be completed successfully. The bodyguard were also in a particularly heavy mood. Although the boss had said that as long as the children weren't harmed by bad people and didn't have any accidents, it was very difficult to pretend to be deaf and mute when their ears were full of the children's cries. Therefore, while Ah Bao expressed deep sympathy for his subordinates, he was also very glad that his young master and young miss were very well behaved and never cried. "All right, children, stand properly. Now, let's start counting." After making sure that all the children were present, the teacher, Yu Zhenjin, clapped her hands and said, "The arrangement for this afternoon is like this. We will first enjoy the scenery in this area. After an hour, Everyone will go to the orchards and fields to help the farmers pick fruits and vegetables. At 4:30, we will gather on the grass by the river and prepare to make dinner. Is everyone understood? Understood, the children said in unison. Xiao Bao raised her little hand. Teacher, I have a question. Classmate Xiao Bao, please ask. Teacher, is dinner prepared in the form of a picnic? Yes, when it's time to make dinner, I will explain some rules in detail. Now, let's enjoy the scenery first. Do you have any questions? No, a soft child's voice said. Okay now, children, please follow the team and don't get separated. Although this mountain village was remote, the natural scenery was very good. On the hillside, peach blossoms were blooming and the clouds were rising. A clear river flowed by the side of the field. Large golden rapeseed flowers bloomed enthusiastically. An old hen was leading a group of chicks in search of food in the field, clucking happily. Attention Hongcha 866. Chapter 334. For the children born in the city, it was their first time seeing a real village. They widened their eyes in curiosity and ran around excitedly on the ridge of the fields. Some of the bolder children ran to the outside of the courtyard wall and peeped at the puppies at the gate of the courtyard. Woof, woof, woof. The puppy suddenly jumped up and bared its teeth at them warily. The children screamed and ran back, but the puppy did not chase after them. It turned out that there was a chain around its neck, and the other end was tied to a pillar. The children laughed heartily and gathered their courage to go to the gate of the courtyard to play with the puppy. An old woman came out of the room when she heard the dog barking. Her right foot was not very nimble, so she walked with a limp. There was a large scar on the left side of her face. Although it was covered by her hair, it could still be seen clearly. Ah, a monster! A little girl screamed in fear when she saw the old woman's face. It's so scary. Is that an old witch? Another little girl grabbed her companion's hand tightly and whispered, Let's get out of here quickly. The old witch will eat people. Xiao Bao glared at the two timid students. Don't talk nonsense. It's very rude. The old woman acted as if she did not hear them and limped towards them. The other children screamed and retreated. Xiao Bao stood in place and said politely, Grandma, I'm sorry to disturb you. We want to play with the puppy. Is that okay? The old woman's eyes were cloudy. Her gaze fell on Xiao Bao, and her voice was a little hoarse. Don't play here. The puppy is very fierce and will bite people. Go out, go out. She stretched out her arms and drove the children out as if she was driving away small animals. Then she picked up a hoe from the gate and walked towards the fields in the distance. What a strange person. Yes, yes. Xiao Bao ignored the students' discussion and walked forward with his hand behind his back. He went to find Xiao Guai, who was picking wildflowers in the fields, and Xiao Yi, who was catching butterflies on the hillside to take home as a specimen. Once the little guys integrated into the environment, they were like wild horses. The teachers did not deliberately restrict their nature. As long as they did not do anything dangerous, they were allowed to play around. An hour passed quickly. The teacher gathered the children and divided them into two groups. Each group had 10 children and was led by a teacher. Xiao Yi and the other two were in Group A, which was led by Ding Lin, and Group B, which was led by Jinjin. The large group of people headed towards Strawberry Garden. The strawberry garden in the village was about 10 mu of land. The owners of the two largest plots of land were Fu Changhai and Li Jianda. These were the two strawberry gardens that the children were going to today. Ding Lin took the children from Group A to Fu Qinghai's strawberry field. Fu Qinghai was an honest farmer in his 50s, with white hair and a face full of wrinkles. Facing so many pairs of innocent eyes, he rubbed his bark-like hands uncomfortably and said cheerfully, Welcome to my strawberry garden. Ding Lin smiled and said, Uncle Fu, can I trouble you to briefly explain to the children how to grow strawberries later? Of course, of course. Everyone, follow me. Before entering the strawberry greenhouse, Fu Qinghai gave each child a small bamboo basket for them to pick strawberries. Inside the wide greenhouse, rows of strawberry trees were neatly arranged. Between the green leaves, there were red strawberries. The rich fragrance of the strawberries filled the air, and it was so sweet that it was tempting. Xiao Bao was the first to notice that there was a hunched figure squatting in front of a row not far away. Judging by her movements, she should be picking strawberries. So many people came in noisily, but she did not look back and continued to do her own thing. Although she could not see her face, Xiao Bao recognized her from her back. She was the old granny with bad legs. Dinglin also noticed and could not help but take a few more glances. Fu Qinghai explained with a smile, "That's my wife. She has bad legs and is a little introverted. Teacher, please don't take offense." No, we're the ones who are disturbing you." Ding Lin smiled politely. "Uncle Fu, where do you think we should start?" Fu Qinghai pointed to the ground beside his feet. "Let's start here. Children, I'll explain to you the techniques of picking strawberries." The children carried their small bamboo baskets and squatted in the ditch. They looked up and listened attentively to Fu Qinghai's explanation of how to identify ripe strawberries and how to pick them. "Okay, everyone can start picking strawberries now." While the children were enthusiastically picking strawberries, Fu Qinghai walked around them and gave them pointers from time to time. Occasionally, he would explain some knowledge about growing strawberries. Because they were too young, he did not go into too much detail. Most of the time, he talked about some interesting details, such as what diseases strawberries were prone to, what insects like to eat strawberries, and so on. Xiao Guai picked a red strawberry. It was crystal clear and so cute. She could not help but sniff it and lick her pink lips. She looked up at Fu Qinghai and said sweetly, "Grandpa, these strawberries look so delicious. Can I have one?" Fu Qinghai smiled wholeheartedly. The wrinkles on his face piled up together. "Little girl, although these strawberries look very clean, you still have to wash them before you can eat them. There's a sink over there. You can wash them there." He raised his hand and pointed to a spot near the door. There was a sink with a running water pipe. It was not very high, and Xiao Guai could reach it on her tiptoes. "Oh, thank you, Grandpa." Xiao Guai smiled brightly, revealing her cute little dimples. Her beautiful big eyes twinkled. "Grandpa, can I take 3? I still have 2 older brothers." Fu Qinghai smiled and said, Of course. You can eat as much as you want. Other children, if you want to eat strawberries, you can also wash them at the sink." The kindergarten had already paid him a generous sum of money. The money was enough to buy a few hundred kilograms of strawberries. "Okay, thank you, Grandpa," the tender voices of children sounded. It turned out that Xiao Guai was not the only child who coveted the cute strawberries. They were just too embarrassed to say it out loud. The children held strawberries in their hands and ran in 2s and 3s to the sink at the door. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao told Xiao Guai not to move and that they would go wash the strawberries. Xiao Guai refused and insisted on doing it herself. She was not greedy at all. She took 3 strawberries and ran to the sink with her little but swaying. She lined up behind the other children. At this moment, the old woman who was picking strawberries not far away walked towards the exit with a basket full of strawberries. After Xiao Guai finished washing the strawberries, she happily walked back. She bumped into the old woman who was carrying a bamboo basket. She sweetly called out, "Hello, Grandma." The old woman stopped in her tracks and stared at Xiao Guai. After carefully examining her, a complicated expression surged in her eyes. There was shock, disbelief, and pain. Xiao Guai then noticed the scar on the old woman's face. Her little mouth opened in shock, but she did not show any fear. After staring blankly for about 2 seconds, she suddenly stretched out her little hand and showed the strawberries in her palm. She smiled brightly and said, "Grandma, thank you for your strawberries." She skipped away like a lively little rabbit. The old woman turned her head stiffly, her eyes fixed on the little figure. She watched as the little girl ran in front of the 2 little boys and fed them 1 strawberry each before putting the last one into her own mouth. The 3 children laughed merrily, and the laughter flew to her side. She opened her mouth and breathed rapidly. Her chest rose and fell rapidly. The bamboo basket in her hand seemed to weigh 1,000 kilograms, and her body was tilting towards the ground. "Wife, what's wrong with you? Are you sick?" Fu Qinghai noticed that something was wrong with his wife and hurried over. He snatched the bamboo basket from her hand and placed it on the ground, supporting her with one hand. The old woman supported her chest with one hand and slowly shook her head. I'm fine. Go to your work. Don't worry about me. You don't look like you're fine. Fu Qinghai took out a bottle of spray from the pocket of her coat and sprayed it at her nose and mouth a few times. He grumbled, I told you to rest at home, but you didn't listen and insisted on coming out to work. Are you feeling better now? She nodded. I'm much better. I'm fine now. Hurry up and go home to rest. I'll do the work in the field. She sighed. I'm the one who dragged you down. Fu Qinghai lowered his voice and said, We're already an old couple. Why are you still saying this? Let's go. I'll take you home. It's okay. I can go back by myself. You should stay here and take care of the guests. The old woman patted his arm. All right then. Be careful on the way back. Fu Qinghai sighed as he looked at his wife's back as she walked away. The old woman came out of the greenhouse and looked at the land full of spring with a dazed expression. Tears gradually welled up in her eyes. Half an hour later, the strawberry picking was completed. Each child, carrying a basket full of ripe strawberries, walked down the country lane, laughing and talking as they returned to their temporary lodgings. Gigai, give me the bamboo basket. Big brother will help you twist it. Gigai, I'll twist it for you. The two little brothers stretched out their hands at the same time to help Xiao Guai twist the bamboo basket. She looked at Xiao Yi and then looked at Xiao Bao. She smiled brightly. Don't fight with me. I'll twist it myself. Mommy said that you should do your own things. That's what a good child should do. Ding Lin, who was walking in front of them, overheard their conversation. She couldn't help but sigh in her heart. The Bailey family's upbringing was really good. The children they raised were polite and sensible. After putting the strawberries back in their residence, the teacher led them to the field to help the farmer uncle pick vegetables. The enthusiastic uncle gave them a lot of fresh vegetables that could be used during the picnic. At 4:30 p.m., everyone gathered on the lawn by the river. The children chattered nonstop. Yu Jinjin clapped her hands to quiet them down and arrange the next tasks. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 335. Yu Jinjin announced, Next, we will start preparing dinner. For tonight's dinner, you will need to find your own ingredients and collect your own firewood. As for the pots, pans, ladles, and other kitchen utensils, they will be prepared by the teachers. Tonight's dinner will also be cooked by the teachers. Ding Lin added, We will still follow the previous grouping. Group A and Group B. Each group will elect a group leader. The group leader will arrange for everyone to search for ingredients or collect firewood. Each group will be given a map. You just need to search for ingredients according to the houses marked on the map. Do you understand? A little boy raised his small hand. Teacher, we can only go to the places marked on the map to find ingredients. Yes, that's right. Ding Lin did not explain. The houses marked on the map were arranged by them in advance, and they paid the owners. Then what do we need to find? There are some dishes that I don't even recognize. A little girl said softly. It's okay. There are names and pictures of the ingredients on the back of the map. Ding Lin passed the map to the children. Sure enough, there were pictures on the back of the map. There were cucumbers, potatoes, tomatoes, and so on. A few minutes later, Ding Lin said, Now that you have received the map, you have to find the ingredients and firewood in an hour. Then come back here. Do you understand? The children all shouted at the same time, Understood. Now, I'll leave everything to you. Teacher you and I won't bother about everyone. We'll just wait for everyone to come back and cook. We'll give a reward to the group that finishes quickly and well. On the other hand, we'll punish the group that doesn't do well. Okay, the time starts now. Ding Lin looked at the watch on her wrist and seriously noted down the time. The children who were initially a little lazy immediately became alert when they heard that it was a competition. The two groups immediately separated and gathered for a meeting. Group A had Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao. The two of them were the most popular in the class, so everyone unanimously decided that they would be the group leader and vice group leader. Xiao Yi was the big brother, so Xiao Bao also listened to his orders. Xiao Yi puffed out her chest, and her pink cheeks looked serious. She seemed to be giving orders. Xiao Bao, you go with Xiao Guai, Xiao Hao, Xiao Han, and Cece to look for ingredients. Jia Jia, Hong Xian, Xiao Rue, and Tiantian will stay here to collect firewood. There were 4 girls and 6 boys in their group. They worked in pairs of 2 and 3. Xiaoyi guessed that the school had already prepared the ingredients. As long as they found the right farmer, it should be easy. Therefore, he asked Xiao Guai and Xiao Bao to go together. Xiao Bao raised his right hand and saluted. Team leader, I promise to complete the mission. The 4 girls were amused by him, and they started to work while talking and laughing. Team B left after them and headed in a different direction. Xiao Yi led the soldiers to the forest in front. Among them, the oldest was only 6 years old. It was obviously difficult for them to break off the branches from the trees. Xiao Yi asked the 2 girls to be responsible for collecting the existing branches in the forest, while he and the 2 boys were responsible for the branches on the trees. Xiao Yi looked at them and frowned. If this went on, there was no way they could collect enough firewood to make dinner. He pondered for a moment, and his eyes suddenly lit up. He shouted, "Uncle Bao!" Ah Bao, who was hiding somewhere, quickly appeared. In front of outsiders, he did not call Xiao Yi young master. Instead, he called him by his name. Xiao Yi, what's the matter? Uncle Bao, you must have brought a dagger, right? Xiao Yi quickly ran in front of him and stretched out her hand. Lend me the dagger. Ah Bao was alert. What do you want to do? I won't do anything bad. Hurry up and lend it to me. Okay. Ah Bao pulled out a dagger from his calf and handed it over. This dagger is very sharp. Be careful. Got it. Thanks. You can disappear now. Xiao Yi turned and ran. Ah Bao's mouth twitched. How could he be at ease and disappear when the young master had such a dangerous item in his hands? Thus, he stood in place and waited to see what Xiao Yi was going to do. Little Wingzi ran back to his companions and mumbled something to them. Ah Bao saw little Wingzi stab the dagger at his waist and walk up to a pine tree that was as thick as a bowl. Little Wingzi wrapped his arms around it and clamped his legs together before climbing up. Ah Bao's heart was in his throat. Xiao Yi, hurry up and come down. It's dangerous. Xiao Yi was an expert at climbing trees. He quickly climbed up and soon reached a branch that was as thick as a wrist. His small body stood on it, and he looked like he was going to fall at any time. The 2 girls could not help but scream. Ah Bao rushed forward and stood under the tree with his arms open. Xiao Yi, it's too dangerous. Hurry up and come down. Xiao Yi's expression did not change. Uncle Bao, don't worry. I'll be fine. Don't stand here. I'm going to chop the branches. Everyone else, start working. We don't have much time left. So this was what he was going to use his dagger for. Xiao Yi held onto the tree trunk with one hand and held the dagger with the other. He aimed at the branches beside him and chopped them down. It was indeed a sharp dagger. Even though he did not have much strength, a branch that was as thick as 2 fingers was chopped off and fell to the ground. When the other 2 boys saw this, they looked for small trees within their strength and planned to break off the branches. Xiao Yi said, "Don't choose those small saplings. They will die if they break off the branches." Also, pine trees and cypress trees are flammable. Even wet firewood can be ignited. Look for these 2 types of branches. The oldest, Hong Xian, asked curiously, Xiao Yi, how do you know so much? Xiao Yi raised his eyebrows proudly. Daddy told me. Fortunately, Daddy had told him about his survival experiences on a desert island. That was how he learned this knowledge. Just as the woodcutter Xiao Yi was busy chopping firewood, Xiao Bao led Xiao Guai and the others to start collecting ingredients according to the route on the map. The process was very smooth. Soon, they had collected 2 big bags of ingredients. Naturally, the 2 boys were holding them. The last house was Fu Qinghai's house. Xiao Bao asked the boys who were holding the bags to wait by the roadside. He led Xiao Guai and Cece forward and knocked on the door. Hello, is anyone home? After a few minutes, they heard the door creak open. An old lady appeared at the door. The moment she saw Xiao Guai, her eyes lit up, but soon her eyes dimmed again. She asked, "What can I do for you?" Xiao Guai tilted his head, revealing his cute little dimples. "Grandma, can you give us some vegetables?" The old lady's voice softened. "What kind of vegetables do you want?" Xiao Guai quickly tugged at Xiao Bao's hand. "Brother, take a look. What's missing?" "Grandma, We also need cucumbers, potatoes, eggs, and fish. Do you have any of these? The old lady looked at Xiao Bao and then at Xiao Guai. So they were siblings. The two children did look a little alike. She nodded. You two come in with me. With that, she walked into the yard and pulled the puppy aside to prevent it from biting the children. Cece, stay here and wait for us, Xiao Bao instructed. He held Xiao Guai's hand and followed behind the old lady. The yard wasn't big. Some flowers and plants were planted, and it was very clean. There were 4 or 5 red brick bungalows. The old lady led them directly to the kitchen. She bent down in front of the fridge to look for what they needed. She asked Xiao Guai casually, Little girl, you look very cute. Do you look like your mother? Xiao Guai replied crisply, Yes, everyone says that I look like my mother. Grandaunt also said that I look exactly like my mother when we were young. It's as if we were cast from the same mold. Pa. An egg slipped from the old lady's hand and smashed on the ground. Xiao Bao said, Grandma, where's the broom? I'll help you clean it. No need. The old lady refused, but quickly changed her mind. It's in the yard outside. Help me get it. Xiao Bao responded and turned to run into the yard. The old lady suddenly went up to Xiao Guai and asked in a low voice, Little girl, what's your mother's name? Xiao Guai blinked her big, beautiful eyes. Grandma, why do you want to know my mother's name? Daddy had once taught her not to tell strangers her parents' names. The old lady was stunned and said, Because you look very much like my friend's daughter. Xiao Guai replied with an "Oh." She tilted her head and looked at her, as if she was considering whether the old lady was a good person. After a moment, she smiled and said, My mother's name is Xiaodong. 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 It's really her. The old lady's body suddenly trembled, and she almost knocked over everything in her hands. Her face suddenly became very ugly. She opened her mouth and gasped for breath, as if someone was choking her neck. Grandma, what's wrong? Xiao Guai was so anxious that she was about to cry. Xiao Bao happened to walk in with a broom. When he saw the situation, he was shocked and quickly ran forward to help the old lady sit on a chair. Grandma, are you okay? Don't be afraid. I'm fine. The old lady comforted them as she took out a small spray from her pocket and sprayed it in front of her nose. After a few minutes, she finally calmed down. She let out a long sigh and looked at the concerned children around her. She couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat, and tears almost fell from her eyes. Grandma, are you okay? The two children asked in unison. I'm fine. Grandma is fine. The old lady wiped the corners of her eyes and forced a smile. However, because of the scar on her face, her smile looked a little scary. She reached out to touch the two children's hair and said softly, How old are you? Xiao Guai said first. We're 5 years old. We're in kindergarten. Good, very good. The old lady's eyes were full of smiles. She looked at them carefully and asked softly, How are your parents? Come and see. Hansha 866. Chapter 336. Xiao Guai nodded proudly. Very good. My daddy loves my mommy very much. Although Xiao Bao was a little confused, he felt that the old grandma was not a bad person and nodded. They're all very good. That's good. The old grandma's smile widened. After a while, she retracted her hand and said, I've prepared everything you need. Go back early. It's going to be dark soon. She put the things she had tidied into a convenience bag and sent them to the gate. Thank you, Grandma. Goodbye, Grandma. The children waved at her. She smiled and waved back. Her hunched body leaned against the gate until their figures disappeared from her sight. Then, she slowly retracted her gaze and returned to the yard with a lonely expression. When the sun set, the children rushed back to the river with the treasures they had found. Soon, they found 2 cooking stoves on the lawn. The teacher had already washed the pots and pans and was waiting for them to come back so that they could start cooking. Wow, teacher, you're so amazing. Are these used for cooking? How did you build them? Ding Lin had already used the firewood Xiao Yi and the others had picked up to start the stove. She wiped the sweat off her face and smiled as she explained to the children how to build a simple stove and how to ignite the firewood to make the fire burn brighter. Then, she instructed the students and team that the boys would be in charge of fetching water, the The girls would be in charge of washing the vegetables, and she would handle the fresh fish by the river. Under the teacher's lead, the two groups of people started to cook. Halfway through cooking, Team B ran out of firewood. The children stared at each other, and Yu Jinjin could not help but break out in cold sweat. The children who were in charge of collecting firewood were very innocent. They raised their little hands pitifully. "Teacher, we've already worked very hard." "Boo-hoo, it's okay. Teacher will think of a way." Yu Jinjin comforted them. She threw down the half-cooked vegetables and ran to Team A's side. "Teacher Ding, do you have enough firewood?" "We have enough." "Why?" Ding Lin was busy with the fish in the pot and did not notice what was happening in Team B. Hong Xian shouted, "Teacher Ding, Team B ran out of firewood." Yu Jinjin coughed and awkwardly said, "Yeah, we ran out of firewood. If you have extra, can you lend me some?" "Sure." He chopped a lot, so there should be some extra. "Take some with you." Ding Lin generously gave her half of the firewood. Woodcutter he was in a good mood when he saw that the firewood he chopped could help his opponent. Dinner was finally ready. The girls had already laid out a beautiful tablecloth on the lawn and arranged the bowls and chopsticks. The two sets of dishes were placed together, and everyone formed a big circle. The children who were picky at home seemed to have been starved for a long time. Their eyes were glowing with a green light as they stared at the fragrant dishes and kept swallowing their saliva. "All right, let's eat. Don't waste food." At the teacher's command, the children picked up their bowls and wolfed down the food. They were starving. "Gigai, be careful. It's hot." He picked up an egg with her chopsticks and placed it in Gigai's bowl. Bao immediately removed the bones from the fish and placed it in her bowl. "Gigai, eat the fish." There are no bones. The other girls were envious. They also wanted such a handsome and caring brother. They wanted to go home and ask their mommy to give birth to one. After dinner, the stars were already shining in the sky. The teacher used the leftover firewood to make a bonfire. Everyone sat around the bonfire and listened to the teacher's summary of the day's activities. Ding Lin glanced at the children who were staring at her and said, "Everyone did a great job today. Did you all learn a lot?" "Yes," they said in unison. "We would like to especially commend Yi. He has great organizational and leadership skills. He also did a great job collecting firewood. Please give him a round of applause." Enthusiastic applause rang out. "Brother E, you're so awesome." Gigai clapped excitedly. Yi was used to being praised since he was young, but he had never been as happy as he was today. He received everyone's admiring gazes. This was the first time he felt shy in front of so many people. His handsome little face was flushed red and his eyes were sparkling. He didn't know where to look. Group A, who won the competition, was rewarded with a chance to talk to their parents on the phone for 5 minutes. The children in Group A were so happy that they jumped up and down. The children in Group B could only look on with envy. Group B, who lost the competition, was punished with a confession of truth. Everyone had to say something from the bottom of their heart. The children all talked at once. "I don't like green peppers. Every time Mommy makes me eat green peppers, I secretly spit them out. I'm very timid. I don't dare to sleep alone at night. I hate my desk mate because he always bullies me." Finally, it was the turn of an introverted little girl named Lu Yi. She stood up and looked at Yi with her clear eyes. She mustered up her courage and said, "I like Bailey E. I want to marry him when I grow up." Everyone burst into laughter. Lu Yi sat down with a red face. She bit her lip and lowered her head without saying a word. The girl sitting next to her turned around and said something to her. Her head hung even lower. "Yi, I didn't expect you to be so popular." Bao poked Yi's arm with a mischievous smile. Yi's cheeks turned red again. Bao laughed at him for 20 years because of this. Yu Jinjin clapped her hands and helped Lu Yi and Yi out of the situation. "Everyone is tired today. Let's go home and rest early. Teacher Ding and I will wake everyone up tomorrow morning. After breakfast, we will return to the city. Does anyone have any questions?" "No." "All right then. Uncle Bodyguard will send everyone back to their respective residences now. Everyone needs to wash up and change on their own. Don't run around at night." Gigai can sleep. Any questions? No. Yu Xinxin breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, these precious children knew how to brush their teeth and wash their faces. Otherwise, she and Ding Lin would be very busy. However, it was still too early for her to be optimistic. This was a rural area. Several families did not have bathrooms at all. The children could not bathe either. There were a few spoiled children. Although they said that there was no problem, their faces were not clean. They did not know how to comb their hair and had to be taken care of by teachers. Little winged hero walked at the front in high spirits, leading his little brother and little sister back home. The owner of the homestay had already turned on the lights in the room and prepared 2 basins of hot water to welcome their return. Gigai, you can't bathe in Uncle's house. Just wipe yourself. Xiao Yi wet a towel in the basin, wrung it dry, and handed it to Xiao Guai. Xiao Bao had already found pajamas from Xiao Guai's suitcase and placed them by the bed. Gigai will go out first. If you need anything, just shout. Got it. Xiao Guai responded softly. After the 2 brothers left, she closed the door and was about to take off her clothes to wipe herself when she suddenly heard Xiao Bao's voice from outside. Grandma, why are you here? Xiao Guai quickly put down the towel, opened the door, and called out crisply, Grandma, you're here. The old woman leaned on a walking stick, held a flashlight, and held a thermos in her hand. She smiled and said, Grandma was worried that you didn't eat enough, so I specially brought chicken soup for you. Come, hurry into the house and drink it while it's hot. The children looked at her eager eyes and didn't have the heart to tell her that they were actually very full now. Hurry, don't stand at the door. Hurry up and come in. The old woman sat on a chair and opened the thermos. A fragrant smell immediately wafted out. 3 small bowls were filled with soup and placed on the table. The children looked at each other and finally reached out to pick up the bowls at the same time. Xiao Guai took a sip, smiled, and sighed with satisfaction. Wow, it's delicious. It's as delicious as Mommy's. The old woman smiled. Drink more if it's delicious. Okay. The old woman looked around the room and saw the 2 basins and the pajamas on the bed. She immediately understood and said softly, I can take a bath at home. Do you want to come? Xiao Yi didn't know what happened to Xiao Bao and the others when they were looking for ingredients, so she was still wary of the old woman. She said politely, Grandma, we don't have to trouble you. We are already very grateful that you brought us chicken soup. The old woman looked a little disappointed. She glanced at Xiao Guai, who was holding a bowl of soup and drinking it, and said, How about this? I'll help your sister wipe her body. She's young and can't do these things by herself. Xiao Yi was still hesitating, but Xiao Bao had already agreed. Okay, then I'll have to trouble you, Grandma. 10 minutes later, the door was closed, and Xiao Guai's giggles could be heard from time to time. Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi were squatting in a corner of the yard. Xiao Yi muttered unhappily, How can you agree to a stranger's request so casually? Xiao Bao lowered his voice and said, Grandma isn't a bad person. I've already checked. Also, didn't you just drink her chicken soup? Xiao Yi muttered. Grandma was so enthusiastic. I couldn't refuse. Xiao Bao patted his shoulder. It's okay. She really isn't a bad person. 20 minutes later, the door opened. Xiao Guai was wearing cute plaid bear pajamas, and her little face was clean. The old woman held her in her arms and wiped her face with children's moisturizer. Her rough fingers rubbed against her cheeks, and Xiao Guai couldn't help but laugh. Grandma, it's so itchy. It'll be done soon. Bear with it. The old woman's eyes were kind, and her movements were very gentle. Xiao Bao and Xiao Yi saw that they were getting along so well. They looked at each other and were a little surprised. The old woman seemed to like Xiao Guai very much. When you go to bed at night, cover yourself with a blanket and close the door. If you have to go to the bathroom in the middle of the night, wake up Uncle to accompany you. Do you understand? The old woman reminded the 3 children repeatedly before she left. Okay, Grandma. Be careful when you go home. It's very dark on the road. The 3 children walked her to the gate of the yard. The old woman waved at the children. Go back to sleep. It wasn't until the 3 small figures left that she sighed and limped home with the help of her walking stick. Come and see. Hongsha 866. Chapter 337. Xia Dong was not used to the nights when the children were not at home. As she accidentally walked to the door of the children's room. She suddenly remembered that they were not at home and returned to the bedroom in loneliness. Bailey Han came out of the study and saw Xia Dong in such a depressed state. She was curled up on a plump fabric sofa. She looked so small and pitiful. He squeezed to her side and pulled her into his arms. "You miss the children?" "Yes." Xia Dong was like a caterpillar. She moved into the most comfortable position in his arms and said sullenly, Hai is also asleep. I suddenly feel like I've become a housewife with nothing to do. All I do is revolve around my husband and children. When you're not at home, I don't know what to do. Bailey Han lowered his head and kissed her hair. "Do you want to go out to work?" She looked up at him, her eyes full of anticipation. "Will you agree?" The corners of his lips turned up. "What do you think? You agree?" Xia Dong hugged his neck excitedly and kissed him hard on the lips. He held the back of her head and deepened the kiss. He did not let go of her until their breathing became irregular. His voice was magnetic and hoarse. "If you feel bored and want to go out to work, I won't stop you. But you can't work too hard." Yes, they definitely won't. Xia Dong had yet to recover from that tender kiss. Her cheeks were flushed, and her voice was soft and charming. But will Grandma and Mom and Dad disagree? Most wealthy families did not want their daughters-in-law to show her face outside. He hugged her tightly. "Grandma is very open-minded. As long as we can convince her, Dad and Mom will be fine. It's not good for me to show my face in this matter. You should have a good talk with them." Xia Dong understood. If she persuaded the three elders, they would definitely think that Bailey Han was too obedient and controlled by her. They might even have some ideas about her. So it was more appropriate for her to do it herself. "Thank you, hubby. I thought you wouldn't support me." She lay on his chest, her heart full of warmth. Bailey Han stroked her long hair and chuckled. "I like to see you working. You're beautiful." He clearly remembered that when she was the editor-in-chief of Charm magazine, she had discussed advertising cooperation with Renjijia. She had exuded a mature and confident charm, which had made his eyes light up. Xia Dong wrapped her arms around his neck and leaned against him. She smiled and said, "Hubby, you're so sweet tonight. Are you afraid that I'll punish you?" He raised his eyebrows. "How can that be? Didn't I say that you can do whatever you want with me? Have you thought of how you want to deal with me?" A mischievous smile appeared on Xia Dong's face. "I didn't have any ideas at first, but now I suddenly have an idea. What do you want to do?" He bit her ear, emphasizing the last word. It was a word that made people's imagination run wild. She unceremoniously bit his earlobe and snorted. "I'll let you see how powerful I am. Let's see if you dare to hide it from me in the future." She was still brooding over the fact that he had secretly sent bodyguards to protect the children. His sexy laughter came from the depths of his throat as his chest heaved up and down. "Wifey, I can't wait to see how powerful you are." She pinched his face and said to him in a libertine tone, "Little girl, go to bed and wait for me." His chest heaved up and down even more. He almost laughed until he was out of breath. "Wifey, so you have this kind of hobby when you're angry." Xia Dong's cheeks flushed red. However, since she had already taken this step, she was going to go all out. She angrily patted his chest. "Be serious. I'm being serious." Bailey Han held back his laughter. It wasn't easy for him to get this kind of benefit. He was afraid that if he continued to laugh, his wife would shrink back. He nodded seriously. "Okay, master. This servant will go lie on the bed and wait for your pleasure." "That's right. Go quickly." Xia Dong deliberately touched the bulge in front of his chest and then quickly jumped down from his body. By the time she found what she needed and rushed back to the bedroom, Bailey Han had really stripped himself down to a pair of shorts and was spread out on the bed like a pancake. His limbs were spread out, and a certain part of his body was already standing up impatiently, saying, Hey. Hello." Xia Dong's cheeks reddened, but a certain person's expression was extremely calm. It was as if he was talking about the weather as he called out to her. "Master, this servant can't wait any longer." Xia Dong almost spat out blood. He was too perverted. "Don't be anxious. I'll be right there." She coughed and thought of her punishment plan. She forced herself to calm down and climbed onto the ridiculously large bed. She took out a few neck tees from her pocket and tied his wrist to the headboard. Wifey, Bailey Han had a bad premonition. His wife had turned into a little devil. He could almost see two small horns on her head. Xia Dong smiled evilly. After confirming that he couldn't move, she knelt by the bed and slowly took off her clothes. After taking off a piece, she casually threw it off the bed. Not long after, she was only left with a pair of black lacy underwear. Her silky long hair, poured down in half, covered her beautiful figure. Her soft and towering breasts were enveloped by the soft light, and her entire body was suffused with an alluring luster. Bailey Han's Adam's apple bobbed, and his deep eyes blazed with fire. She deliberately threw him a coquettish glance and supported herself with her arms. Like a lazy little wildcat, she slowly climbed up his body. Her silky smooth skin was tightly pressed against him, rubbing against him inch by inch. Her buds had already bloomed and were slowly moving up his sturdy abdomen. As she teased him, sparks flew in all directions, almost setting the prairie ablaze. Her concave area rubbed against his convex area. The moist heat soaked the black lacy underwear and stained his scalding skin. His mouth was dry and his eyes were burning. He panted heavily, and his smooth chin was raised in impatience. Beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. He was already having a hard time enduring and was about to explode from the pain. But that little devil was still unwilling to let him go. She deliberately rubbed against his chest and licked his earlobe with the tip of her tongue. She whispered seductively, "Ahan, I'm so hot." He panted heavily and looked at the little woman on top of him. His eyes had already turned red from lust. "Wifey, let go of me. No, I haven't played enough." Her slender fingers grasped his perky buttocks and slowly tightened. Her movements were very jerky, but very seductive. He raised his chin high and was almost unable to control himself. After he exploded, she wiped the liquid on her hands and got off the bed with a naughty smile on her lips. "Hubby, I'm going to take a shower. Gigai can lie here." Little rascal. She clearly knew that a certain part of his body was not appeased and was even more inflamed. She actually left him here, just like that. Bailey Han gritted his teeth, and the sound of fabric tearing could be heard. Before Xiaodong could react, her body was already in the air. The next moment, she was lying on the soft mattress. A certain someone's hideous face that was tortured by lust suddenly appeared above her. "Little rascal, you want to escape after lighting me up?" A certain someone imprisoned her in his arms. His hot breath sprayed on her face, and his low and hoarse voice was filled with lust. Over the next few hours, Bailey Han tortured her until she cried and begged for mercy. Reality proved that she would always be the weaker party in front of him. Even with the help of neck tees and ropes, she could not succeed in her counterattack. This was what it meant to reap what you sow. The next day, Xia Dong rubbed her aching waist and came to the conclusion that made her cry. On the other side, the children in the kindergarten were extremely excited. They could finally leave this small mountain village and go home. After breakfast, the children dragged their small suitcases and ran happily to the minibus. Little Wingzy and his siblings walked at a leisurely pace at the back of the group. Lil Guai looked back at the village, her beautiful eyes filled with reluctance. Big brother Wingzy, I think this place is pretty good." Xiao Bao touched her hair and said seriously, "If that's the case, then Gigai shouldn't go home with us. You can stay here." Xiaoyi also looked serious. "Yeah, we'll tell Daddy and Mommy that Gigai can't bear to leave this place." Ah, Xiao Guai's little face immediately fell. She said pitifully, "Are you going to leave me behind?" Xiaoyi nodded. "Yeah, you said you couldn't bear to leave this place." Xiao Guai frowned and almost cried. "I just couldn't bear to leave. I didn't say I was going to stay here. Brother, don't leave me behind, okay? I miss Daddy and Mommy so much." Xiao Bao laughed. "Little fool, we're just teasing you. How can we leave you behind?" Xiaoyi touched her head and sighed. "Gigai, why are you so naive? I'm so worried that you'll be sold off one day and still help them count the money." Xiao Guai was stunned. Then she said angrily, "You're so mean. When I get home, I'm going to tell Daddy and Mommy that you bullied me." In the distance, Teacher Ding Lin shouted, "Xiao Yi, Xiao Bao, Xiao Guai, it's only the three of you left. Hurry up and get in the car." "Coming," Xiao Bao answered and grabbed the suitcases from Xiao Guai. "Let's go. The teacher is rushing us." Xiao Bao dragged the two suitcases forward. Xiao Yi dragged the suitcases with one hand and held Xiao Guai's hand with the other. Xiao Guai suddenly stopped in her tracks and pointed to a big tree on the right. "Brother Yi, look over there. It looks like an old granny." Xiao Yi followed her line of sight. It really was that strange old granny. She leaned on a walking stick and leaned against the big tree. She kept staring in their direction, but no one knew what she was looking at. "Yeah, it's the old granny. Let's go." Xiao Yi turned around and tugged at Xiao Guai's little hand. "Brother Yi, you guys go first. I'll go say goodbye to Granny." Xiao Guai ignored Xiao Yi's attempts to stop her and ran toward the big tree. The old woman looked at Xiao Guai running over from afar with a hint of warmth in her eyes. Xiao Guai ran in front of her and smiled. "Granny, we're leaving. Goodbye." The old woman touched her head and smiled kindly. "Goodbye." The minibus drove far away. Xiao Yi looked back and saw the old woman standing beside the big tree, staring at them from afar. At Hongcha 866. Chapter 338. After returning home, the children told Xia Dong and Bailey Han about the old lady. They all thought that the old lady liked children, so she took special care of them and did not take it to heart. The impact of this spring outing on the children was obvious. Xiao Guai, who had always been picky about food, was not only not picky about food, but also ate all the food in her bowl at every meal, not wasting a single bit. Little Wingsy and Little Treasure both had the thought that they were not strong enough, so when Bailey Han announced that he had hired a coach to teach them martial arts, they cheered and jumped for joy. Their spirits were high as they looked forward to the arrival of April. Just as they were craning their necks and gazing into the distance, April stepped into the world with a warm spring breeze. The Taekwondo and Judo coaches also arrived as scheduled. Every morning at 6 o'clock, the three little guys were dragged out of bed by Bailey Han with sleepy eyes and brought to the training room. At first, the three of them were not used to it. They stood weakly in the empty training room and yawned. Slowly, after they got used to it, they did not need to be called. When it was time, they would get out of bed and wait for the coach on the training field. Gi Gai was waiting for the coach. The day before the Qingming Festival, Bailey Yun came back from the United States to visit Xiao Bao. In the afternoon, the plane arrived in City A. After he walked out of the airport, he looked at his watch and got into the car that his family chauffeur had sent to pick him up. He did not go home directly, but asked the chauffeur to drive the car to the gate of Imperial Kindergarten. When the car arrived at the kindergarten, school had just finished. Xiao Bao and her siblings came out of the school gate and saw Bailey Yun leaning on the Rolls-Royce at a glance. He, who always valued his image, looked travel-worn. However, this did not detract from his handsome appearance and elegant temperament. He lazily crossed his arms, and there was a warm smile on his handsome face. He looked handsome and unrestrained. Many parents who came to pick up their children were attracted by his outstanding figure. Second uncle, Xiao Yi and Xiao Guai shouted excitedly and enthusiastically threw themselves at him. Xiao Bao pursed her pink lips. She lowered her head slightly and walked slowly at the back. "Little guys, did you miss second uncle?" Bailey Yin snorted on Xiao Yi's head, then picked up Xiao Guai and kissed her cheek. Finally, he looked at Xiao Bao, who was slowly walking towards him. After leaving City A after the Spring Festival, although Xiao Bao called him Daddy at the airport, he refused to call him every time he called, which made Bailey Yun very depressed. At this moment, the awkward child dawdled for a long time before approaching him. Bailey Yun placed Xiao Guai on the ground. He reached out his arm and pulled Xiao Bao, who was standing a meter away from him, over. He rubbed his hair hard and chuckled. "Son, Daddy is back. Don't you want to give Daddy a warm hug?" Xiao Bao puffed up his cheeks and turned his face awkwardly. "Oh, welcome back. Yo, you're really cold. I've been working overtime these past few days in vain, just to squeeze out a few more days to accompany you." Ba Liyun's tone was lonely and bleak, just like a resentful woman who was despised by others. Xiao Bao could not help but turn a look at him. At such a close distance, he saw that his eyelids were slightly green and his eyes were bloodshot. It seemed like he had not slept well for a long time. Xiao Bao had a very complicated feeling in his heart. When he was not around, he would miss him, but when he really appeared in front of him, he felt helpless and did not know how to face him. In short, Xiao Bao accepted the fact that Bai Liyun was his father, but he was not used to interacting with him. His little eyes flickered, and his lips moved as he said dryly, You don't have to work so hard in the future." Bai Liyun was overjoyed by his seemingly caring words. He smiled and carried him up. "Son, I'll take it that you're concerned about me, huh?" Xiao Bao's pink little ears were slightly red. While the father and son were talking about their feelings, he had already held Xiao Guai's hand, quietly retreated, and got into the car. "Son, did you miss me when I wasn't around?" Bai Liyun placed Xiao Bao in the Rolls-Royce and sat beside him. He smiled and said, "I missed you a lot." Xiao Bao said in a muffled voice, "It's okay. I didn't miss you a lot." Bai Liyun cupped his heart and said with melancholy, "Son, you hurt my heart too much." Xiao Bao seemed to be used to having such a thick-skinned father. He did not feel embarrassed at all. Instead, he felt a little happy. Bai Liyun could stay in the country for 3 days this time. He planned to take Xiao Bao out to play during the Tomb Sweeping Day holiday to improve the relationship between father and son. On the day of the Tomb Sweeping Day, Xia Dong and Bai Lihan brought Xiao Yi and Xiao Guai to visit their mother's grave. As if to celebrate the festival, it started to drizzle. The rain was very light, so there was no need to hold an umbrella. At most, it would be a little wet when it touched people. Xiao Yi and Xiao Guai each held a bouquet of lilies in their arms as the family of 4 walked on the tree-lined road. There were many people like them who were visiting the grave. They were in 2s and 3s, and their expressions were solemn or sad. Xia Dong did not expect to meet Su Yunxin's parents here. Su Bolin held Mrs. Su's waist as the two of them walked alone. They looked sad, and Mrs. Su's eyes were red. Uncle, Auntie, Bai Lihan greeted them politely. Su Bolin and his wife were stunned for a moment before they nodded. "You're here to visit the grave, too." Bai Lihan turned his head to look at Xia Dong. "We're here to visit mother-in-law." The atmosphere was a little awkward. Ever since Su Yunxin's matter was exposed, the two families had completely fallen out and had not interacted for a long time. Su Bolin coughed and said, "Then go quickly. Don't delay." Bai Lihan nodded politely. The family of 4 was about to leave when Su Bolin pursed his lips and suddenly said, "Ahan." Bai Lihan turned around. "Uncle, is there anything else?" Su Bolin's eyes were filled with guilt. He hesitated for a moment before he slowly said, "I haven't had the chance to apologize to you and Xia Dong. Today, I want to apologize to you on behalf of Yunxian. I don't expect you to forgive her, but I hope you don't hate her." Bai Lihan said calmly, "Uncle, let bygones be bygones. Don't mention it again." Hating someone was actually a very difficult thing. Because of hatred, you always remember the reason for your hatred. You remember the pain that others had caused you. Every time you recalled it, it was like you were being dismembered. In front of Xia Ling's tombstone were flowers that the children had presented to her. Xia Dong went forward and squatted in front of the tombstone. She stared at the small photo on the tombstone and said gently, "Mom, Xiao Guai's illness has been cured. Ahan and I have given you a little grandson. Are you happy?" "Mom, Ahan is very good to me. We live a very happy life. You can rest assured in heaven." Every time Xia Dong came to visit her mother, she felt bad. She felt that it was unfair for her mother. She felt that it was a pity that her mother did not have a good day. Her nose was sour and her eyes were moist. Bai Lihan helped her up from the ground. He stared at Xia Ling's photo with a serious expression and said, "Mom, don't worry. I will take good care of Xia and the children." While they were reminiscing about Xia Ling, they did not know that a thin figure was hiding behind the tombstone behind them. Every word they said fell into her ears. Her thin shoulders trembled slightly, as if she was suppressing something. "Honey, let's go." Bai Lihan put his arm around Xia Dong's waist and beckoned the 2 children to follow. The figure could not help but straighten up. She looked past the tombstone and greedily wanted to take a few more glances at them. Unexpectedly, she had squatted for too long, and her legs were already numb. In addition, her right leg was not flexible to begin with. As her body leaned forward, she stumbled and bumped into the fruit plate in front of the tombstone. The fruit plate fell over with a clang, and the apples inside rolled out. "Hey, I think I heard something." Lil Guai and Little Wingsy held hands as they walked at the back. Lil Guai's ears were sharp. Suddenly, they stopped in their tracks and looked around. However, they did not discover anything because the figure had quickly retreated behind the tombstone. An apple rolled to her feet with a gurgle. Xiao Guai stared at the big red apple at her feet and shouted, "Mommy, there's an apple." "It's so strange. Where did the apple come from?" "Maybe someone accidentally dropped it during the ceremony." Xiaodong also looked around. Finally, she found several apples scattered in front of the tombstone on the left. She pointed there and said, "It probably rolled over from there. Then I'll take this apple back." Xiao Guai bent down to pick up the apple and ran to the tombstone on the left. The person hiding in the back didn't have time to dodge and was hit by her. Xiao Guai looked at the figure in surprise and smiled sweetly. "Grandma, you're here too." The old woman had no choice but to stand up. With her back facing Xia Dong, she lowered her voice and said, "Yes, Xiao Guai, hurry over. Your daddy and mommy are still waiting for you." Xia Dong and Bailey Han were surprised to see the old woman's back. Xia Dong asked Xiao, does Xiao Guai know that old woman?" Xiao had already recognized the old woman's back and nodded. "She's the old woman we met during the spring outing in a mountain village." "I see. Then we should go over and say hello to her and thank her for taking care of you. Hubby, what do you think?" Bailey Han had no objections. "Grandma." Xiao Yi ran in front and greeted the old woman affectionately. "Xiao Yi, you're here too." The old woman pretended to have just seen her. "Hello, Andy." It was Xia Dong who spoke. Hearing Xia Dong's familiar voice, the old woman suddenly froze. She lowered her head and did not dare to look back at her. Seeing that the old woman did not respond, Xia Dong walked in front of her and said politely, "Auntie, I heard from the children that you took care of them during their spring outing. I thank you on behalf of the children." The old woman still lowered her head. Her right hand gripped the walking stick tightly as she said in a hoarse voice, "It's okay. I like the 3 children very much." Bailey Han sized up the old woman. She was neatly dressed and had white hair. Her right leg was not agile, and she was holding a walking stick in her hand. Perhaps it was because of the scar on her face. She kept her head down and was unwilling to look up at them. He did not take it to heart and smiled. "Annie, it's not easy to get a taxi on this road. If you don't mind, I can give you a ride." The old woman shook her head. "It's okay. There's no need to trouble you. I can go back by myself." Xiao Guai blinked his big eyes and said softly, "Grandma, there's still a long way to go from here. Why don't you take our car?" Xia Dong said, "Yes, Auntie. It's not safe for you to take a car alone. Let us take you to the bus station." The old woman lowered her head and was silent for a moment. Finally, she said in a hoarse voice, "Okay then. Sorry to trouble you." Xia Dong smiled. "It's no trouble. Xiao Yi, help Grandma. We're leaving." Bailey Han realized that the 2 children were really close to the old woman, especially Xiao Guai. She walked on the left side of the old woman with a bright smile on her little face. She would say something that he did not understand from time to time. It sounded like a story that an old person would tell a child. He guessed that the old woman might have told it to her in the past. The old woman also liked Xiao Guai very much. She would stroke her little head from time to time and laugh softly. The old woman and the young girl would laugh together like a pair of grandmother and granddaughter. The group of people walked on the shaded road and headed out of the cemetery. A man walked towards them. His hair was white and the corners of his eyes were full of wrinkles. He was holding a bouquet of chrysanthemums in his hands. It was Xia Jinxing. Xia Dong stopped in her tracks. Bailey Han's hand on her waist tightened. It was obvious that he was trying to comfort her. Xia Jinxing also stopped in his tracks. He looked a little uncomfortable. His right hand clutched his chrysanthemum tightly. "Xia, Han, you're here too." Bailey Han's lips moved. Just as he was about to speak, Xiao Guai's exclamation came from behind. "Grandma, what's wrong?" Then came Xiao Yi's anxious voice. "Grandma's asthma is acting up." "Xiao Guai, can you check if Grandma's spray is in that pocket?" Bailey Han and Xia Dong quickly turned around to help. Bailey Han took the spray from Xiao Guai and sprayed it in front of the old woman's nose. Her rapid breathing gradually weakened and her twitching body gradually stabilized. Even so, she still lowered her head and was unwilling to raise it. Xia Dong held her arm and said worriedly, "Auntie, why don't you sit down and rest for a while?" She calmed her breathing and said slowly, "I'm fine. I'm fine now." Xia Jinxing looked at them in a daze. He clearly didn't understand what was going on with this team. After Bailey Han confirmed that the old madam had recovered, he patted Xiao Yi's little head and said, "Xiao Yi, Xiao Guai, why aren't you greeting him? Hurry up and greet Grandpa." The two children's first reaction was to look at Xia Dong's expression. They knew that their mommy didn't like their grandpa. Xia Dong's expression was indifferent and didn't show any displeasure. Thus, the two children were relieved. They smiled and said, "Hello, Grandpa." Xia Jinxing was so excited that he almost cried. He said repeatedly, "Hello, hello." Awesome novel, Hongcha 866. Chapter 339. Let's go. It's getting late. Xia Dong patted the two children's shoulders, still ignoring Xia Jinxing. After all, their relationship had been rigid for so many years. Even if she was willing to let go of her hatred for him, she was still not ready to face him. Xia Jinxing's expression stiffened. Bailey Han smiled and said lightly, "Father-in-law will go first." Xia Jinxing was suddenly shocked, and his eyes quickly filled with joy. He nodded again and again. "Okay, you go first. I'll accompany your mother-in-law." Xia Dong's expression changed, and her lips tightened. She wanted to say something, but in the end, she held it back. The old woman's fingers holding the crutch suddenly trembled, and her body was unstable. Xia Dong quickly supported her. "Annie, are you okay?" I'm fine." Her voice was a little trembling. Xia Dong thought that she had not recovered from her illness, so she did not care about being angry with Xia Jinxing and helped her out of the cemetery. Xia Jinxing looked at their departing figures. In the end, his gaze landed on the old woman, and his brows furrowed slightly. That thin and frail figure was hunched over, as if she was carrying 1,000 kilograms of weight on her back. Her entire body exuded a sorrowful and lonely aura, causing him to feel sorrow in his heart. The old woman seemed to be very afraid of others seeing her face. Along the way, she kept her head down, shrank herself in the corner, and did not say a word. Bailey Han sent her to the station, where she could take the minibus back to the town. After the couple sent her to the bus, the minibus had not yet started. Xia Dong saw many fruit vendors around the station. She whispered a few words to Bailey Han, and then quickly walked to the fruit stall to buy some fruits. Xia Dong got on the minibus, intending to give the fruits to the old woman. She looked around and saw an old face in the second last row. The left side of the face was uneven with terrible scars, and the right side was full of wrinkles, which set off her gray hair. Her turbid eyes were filled with surprise. She lowered her head in a panic, avoiding Xia Dong's gaze. The driver was already urging them. Xia Dong did not have time to think anymore. She quickly walked to the old woman, stuffed the fruit bag in her hand, and said, "Annie, take these fruits and eat them on the road. Be careful on the road." The old woman's bark-like hands grasped the fruit bag tightly. She nodded heavily, and her voice was a little choked with sobs. "Okay, goodbye. Miss, I'm going to drive. Please get off quickly." The driver urged again. Xia Dong only had time to say goodbye before he hurried out of the car. On the way home, Xia Dong felt that something was wrong. Bailey Han turned his head and saw her frowning and deep in thought. He chuckled and asked, "Honey, what are you thinking about? I keep feeling that something is not right. What's wrong?" Xia Dong suddenly turned to look at him and said seriously, "Honey, that Annie, she lived 50 or 60 kilometers away from city. Why did she come here to visit the grave?" Bailey Han raised his eyebrows. Maybe the one in the grave is her friend. Well, let's assume that what you said is right. I found that the apple plate in front of the grave was overturned, and the apples rolled on the ground. If that's the grave of the Annie's friend, why did she let those apples roll on the ground and not pick them up? Maybe it happened so suddenly that she forgot. Honey, aren't you thinking too much? Bailey Han thought that the old woman was a very ordinary old woman, and there was nothing special about her. Maybe, Xia Dong frowned. The reason why I think she's strange is that when I was delivering the fruits to the car, I accidentally saw her face, although it was full of wrinkles and scars, and it was almost impossible to see her original face. I felt that there was something familiar between her eyebrows. Hearing her words, Bailey Han also had some ideas. She kept her head down all the way, as if she didn't want us to see her face. Xia Dong suddenly had an idea. Honey, do you think the old auntie is someone I used to know? Bailey Han smiled. Honey, don't worry too much. If fate wills it, we'll meet her again. You can ask her then. Yes, you're right. In the blink of an eye, a month had passed. Xia Dong had almost forgotten about this matter, but something suddenly happened that made her notice the strangeness of the old woman again. On this day, she picked up Xiao, Yi, and her siblings from school and parked the car not far from the school gate. Every time she waited for the children at this place, they already knew the exact location, so she wasn't in a hurry to get out of the car. She sat in the car and waited for the children. She inadvertently looked up and saw an old figure standing across the street. She took a closer look and saw that it was the old woman. Just as she was surprised, the school gate opened, and a group of children poured out one after another. The old woman hurriedly hid her body behind a pillar and poked her head out slightly. When she saw Xiao, Yi, and her siblings appear at the school gate, the corners of her lips curled up and her eyes filled with joy. The children chattered as they walked towards Xia Dong's BMW. Xia Dong opened the car door for them and welcomed them into the car. She gave them a few instructions, then got out of the car and ran across the road. The old woman's gaze followed the children, so when she saw Xia Dong get out of the car, she quickly shrank back and leaned her back against the pillar. She wanted to wait for them to leave before coming out. She didn't expect Xia Dong's voice to suddenly sound in her ears. Auntie, the old woman turned her head stiffly and arched her back to hide her face. Auntie, why are you here? Xia Dong's heart was full of questions. The old woman lowered her head even more and whispered, I was passing by and just wanted to take a look. Auntie, may I ask if we know each other before? The old woman's tone was a little flustered. No, we don't know each other, but I think you look a little familiar. The old woman said without hesitation. You must be mistaken. Xia Dong hesitated for a moment, then suddenly reached out to hold the old woman's shoulders, trying to make her look up to her. However, the old woman was very stubborn and refused to look up. Auntie, I want to see your face. No, my face is too scary. It's better not to scare you. Madam, I should go. Please let go of me. Xia Dong had no choice but to let go of her. Auntie, where are you going? I'll send you. No need. The old woman didn't want to stay a moment longer. She leaned on her walking stick and walked quickly to the intersection, but her legs were inconvenient, and she almost tripped several times. Her back view looked flustered and disheveled. Xia Dong felt an inexplicable sadness in his heart. She bit her lip and ran to the old woman's side. Without any explanation, she held her arm. Auntie, let me send you. My car is parked over there. No, it's really not necessary. The old woman struggled a few times, but Xia Dong held her arm tightly and almost dragged her to the BMW. She had no choice but to give up struggling. At an angle that Xia Dong couldn't see, the old woman's eyes were filled with tears. Xia Dong helped the old woman into the car. The three children were a little surprised. Xiao Guai cried out in surprise. Grandma, are you here to visit us again? Again? This word was profound and thought-provoking. The old woman rubbed her hands awkwardly and explained to Xia Dong. A few days ago, I sent strawberries to the city and came to visit the three children. I see. Thank you for your concern, Auntie. Xia Dong smiled and nodded. It seemed that she had specially come to visit the children today and wasn't just looking around, as she had said earlier. Why did the old woman like the three children so much? Xiaodong was getting more and more curious. Through the rearview mirror, Xiaodong saw the old woman affectionately stroking Xiao Guai's hair and telling a story to the children in a low voice. She coughed and asked, "Auntie, where are you going? Or should I send you directly to the station?" The old woman paused and said, "Send me to the station. Sorry to trouble you." Xiaodong sent her to the bus and watched the bus leave the station. Then she took the children home. On the way, she asked, "Why didn't you tell me that Grandma came to visit you a few days ago?" The three children looked at each other. Finally, Xiao Bao raised his arm and answered, "Reporting to Mom, Grandma told us not to tell the adults. She also said that she didn't mean any harm. She was worried that you would be unhappy if you found out, so she didn't allow her to visit us." Xiaodong was speechless. She stared at the three innocent and cute little faces in the mirror. "Do you think your daddy and I are unreasonable people?" The three of them shook their heads in unison and said sweetly, "No." "Then why did you hide it from me?" Xiao Guai pouted pitifully. "Grandma asked us for a long time, so we agreed." Xiao Yi asked seriously, "Mommy, are you angry now?" Xiaodong felt defeated. "Forget it, I'm not angry." Xiaodong had an idea. She wanted to investigate the old woman's identity. Although she could tell that the old woman didn't mean any harm, she felt that the old woman was hiding something from her. That night, she went to Xiao Bao's place to ask about the old woman's address. Xiao Bao drew a simple map for her and said, "Mom, are you really going to Grandma's house?" "Yes, I feel that Grandma is hiding something from us. I want to find out." "Okay then. Mom, if you're lost, you can ask anyone about Fu Qinghai's house. You'll find it." "Fu Qinghai?" "Yes, that's Grandma's husband's name." "Oh, by the way, I haven't asked. What's Grandma's name?" Xiao Bao scratched his head in frustration. "I don't know either. As a junior, who would ask an elder's name in front of them? That would be rude." Xiaodong patted his shoulder in amusement. "It's okay. When I get there, I'll ask anyone and I'll find out." Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 340. Xiaodong reported her plan to Bailey Han. Before Bailey Han approved it, he made a request. He wanted to send her bodyguard, Lung Shui, to go with her. "Hubby, I'm not going into a tiger's den. Isn't it a little too much to bring a bodyguard?" Xiaodong was speechless. Bailey Han pretended to be serious. "It's not an exaggeration at all. As long as you're more than 10 kilometers away from me, you have to bring a bodyguard." Xiaodong was completely in awe of him and bared her teeth like a wild kitten. "President Bailey, it's safer if you just put a metal chain around my neck." He stroked his chin in a serious manner. "Wifey, your suggestion is worth considering." She pounced on him and rubbed his cheek. "You actually dare to consider it? I'll prepare handcuffs and handcuff you first." He caught her mischievous little paw and held it tightly in his palm. His sexy lips curved into a mischievous smile. "Handcuffs, candles, a whip. Wifey, I didn't expect you to have such a strong taste. But since you like it, I'll play with you. Let's try it tonight, okay?" She would never be his match in terms of shamelessness. He suddenly turned over and pinned her under his body. His deep eyes were filled with tenderness as he supported himself with his arms beside her body. His scorching gaze almost burned her to ashes. Her back was pressed tightly against the desk, and her fingers were gripping the edge of the desk uneasily. "Hubby, this is the office," she mumbled. Her seductive lips opened and closed, and his eyes were about to burst into flames. However, he still had a faint smile on his face. So, his hand had already reached under her shirt and was quietly invading her territory. She couldn't help but tremble. Her fingers clasped his arm tightly, and she muttered, "You're a disgrace to the gentleman." A low and magnetic laughter came from the depths of his chest. He suddenly carried her up and walked quickly to the lounge. "I won't anymore." An hour later, she was blushing and hiding under the blanket. She was curled up like a caterpillar and refused to come out. She had only come to the company to discuss some matters with him during his lunch break, but she was abducted to the bed by him. Her willpower was too weak. Bailey Han stood by the bed, neatly dressed. There was a relaxed smile on his handsome face, and his eyebrows were raised. That was the unique, high-spirited feeling that came after a satiated meal. He bent down and hugged the bulging blanket in his arms. He chuckled softly. Tired? She arched her body like a little bug and accurately found the position of his chest. She leaned her little head against it and muttered in a muffled voice, "How am I going to get out later?" When she came to find him, she was wearing one set of clothes. The two of them stayed in the office for more than an hour, and when she left, she changed into another set of clothes. Even a fool could guess what they did. "Come out, don't be bored." Bailey Hahn pulled the blanket down from her head. Her cheeks were flushed, and she still looked charming. Her eyes were watery and lively. He rubbed her soft hair affectionately. "Just walk out like this. No one will dare to laugh at you." Tears welled up in her eyes. "They just won't laugh in front of me." She believed that such a good source of gossip would be unforgivable if she didn't spread it everywhere. "Don't mind what others think. As long as we live comfortably, it's fine." Bailey Hahn lowered his head and kissed her forehead. He comforted her gently. "If you don't want to go out alone, I'll accompany you downstairs." She quickly shook her head. "That will only make things worse. I'll face it alone." She pushed his chest. "Don't you still have a meeting? Hurry up and go." He looked up at her. His eyes were filled with tenderness. The corners of his lips curled up. "Are you sure you'll be fine by yourself?" Hearing him say that, she felt a little embarrassed. "It's fine. I was just casually complaining. Hurry up and go do your work. Don't worry about me." He caressed her face gently. "Silly girl, you don't have to be so righteous in front of me. You don't have to pretend to be relaxed. Honey, sometimes you're so sensible that it makes my heart ache." Actually, he had wanted to say this to her for a long time. He liked to see her throw a tantrum in front of him. He didn't like it when she was willing to be wrong for his sake. Xiaodong leaned her head on his chest and wrapped her arms around his waist. She felt as if a hot spring had flowed through her heart. It was warm and comfortable. She knew a long time ago that she hadn't married the wrong person. She was glad that he had forcefully tied her to his side. She was also glad that she had made the decision to open her heart to him. Otherwise, she would have missed the love of her life. In the end, Bailey Hahn still wrapped an arm around her waist and sent her downstairs under the watchful gazes of the employees who were pretending to be busy but were actually gossiping. Xiaoshui Village. The village was like its name. Clear water surrounded the valley, and spring covered the mountains. It was a beautiful sight. Xiaodong stepped on the green grass and walked between the fields. She held a simple map drawn by Xiao Bao in her hand as she looked for Fu Qinghai's house. Leng Shui followed behind her at a distance. After all, it was the first time that Xiaodong had come to this unfamiliar place. Eventually, she got lost. By the field, a 7 or 8-year-old child was leading an old cow. The old cow was eating grass leisurely with its head buried in the ground. The child looked at them curiously. Xiaodong smiled in a friendly manner. "Little kid, do you know where Fu Qinghai lives?" The child nodded shyly and pointed at the hill. "Go over this hill and turn right. You'll see a brick house. That's Grandpa Fu's house." "Little kid, do you know the name of Grandpa Fu's wife?" The child shook his head. "I don't know, but we all called her Grandma Xia. Her surname was Xia. Was it a coincidence?" Xiaodong had an idea. She took out a handful of candies from her pocket and stuffed them into his hand. "Thank you, little kid." The child smiled embarrassedly. "You're welcome, Auntie. Thank you for the candies." Xiaodong smiled and stroked his head. She walked in the direction he pointed. After climbing over the hillside, what came into view was a lush green vegetable field. A few peasant women were picking vegetables in the field, chatting and laughing about family matters. Xiaodong did not forget the purpose of her visit. She walked to the field and smiled at them. "Big sister, sorry to disturb you. May I ask if Fu Qinghai lives here?" The women looked up at her at the same time. One of them pointed at a house in the distance and smiled honestly. "Yes, it's over there." "Okay, thank you." Xiaodong followed her gaze and looked at the house. She smiled and said, "Big sister, may I ask what the name of Fu Qinghai's wife is?" The women exchanged glances with each other and began to discuss among themselves. Finally, someone said, "We only know that her surname is Xia, and we've always called her Big Sister Xia. We really don't know her full name." Xia Dong found it unbelievable. How could someone live here alone for so many years and not know her full name? Another woman added, Fu Qinghai's family didn't live here originally. They moved here more than 10 years ago. Actually, we don't know much about their family, Xia Dong nodded. Big sister, do you know if they have any relatives? The big sister looked at her in confusion. Who are you? Why do you keep asking about their family? Xia Dong smiled. It's like this. Our children came here for a spring outing more than a month ago. Annie Xia took special care of the children, so I came here to thank her. The big sister was relieved. She smiled and said, I see. The Fu family doesn't seem to have any relatives. Other than the neighbors, they rarely interact with others. Someone said, they have a son, but he's a good-for-nothing. Hey, Annie Wong, don't tell anyone about those things. I'm just saying it casually. Xia Dong didn't get much information from them. It seemed that Fu Qinghai's family was quite mysterious. In front of her was a one-story red brick courtyard. The courtyard door was closed. Xia Dong raised her hand and knocked on the door. Is anyone home? She called a few times, but no one answered. She only heard the sound of dogs barking in the courtyard. It was morning now, so they might be working in the fields. Xia Dong thought of the strawberry garden that Xiao Bao mentioned. She asked a few people on the way and successfully found the Fu family's strawberry garden. Outside the greenhouse, an old couple was busy packing strawberries. The old woman sat on a low chair and packed the strawberries while Fu Qinghai bent over to carry them. Xia Dong went forward. Uncle, Auntie, sorry to disturb you. The old woman acted as if she didn't hear her and continued with what she was doing. Fu Qinghai put down the box in his hands and turned around. He was slightly startled when he saw a young and beautiful woman standing in front of him. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and his face turned pale. Xia Dong was also looking at Fu Qinghai. Although his face was full of wrinkles, she could vaguely see that he looked like a young man. Just like the old woman, he gave her a very familiar feeling. Where had she seen him before? Fu Qinghai forced himself to return to normal and coughed. Who are you looking for? Xia Dong put the 2 gift boxes on the ground and said with a smile, Uncle, I'm Xiao Yi and her sibling's mother. You and Annie took care of the children last month, so I'm here to thank you. Fu Qinghai rubbed his hands uncomfortably. He glanced at the old woman and said, You're too polite. My wife doesn't like strangers, so don't mind her. Let's go home and have a cup of tea. Stay for lunch. Xia Dong came to find out more about the situation, so she didn't refuse. She smiled and said, Uncle, let's finish this first. I'll help you. No need, no need. I'm not in a hurry anyway. Wife, hurry up and accompany the guest home. I'm going to town to buy some groceries. Uncle, a simple meal is fine. Xia Dong hurriedly stopped Fu Qinghai. If you're so polite, I'll be too embarrassed to stay and trouble you. Fu Qinghai smiled honestly. Daughter, you don't know, we don't have any relatives. It's rare to have guests, so we're happy. It's only 100 meters from town, so it's very convenient. My wife go home first. I'll be back soon. Daughter, come with us. The last sentence he said was referring to Lang Shui, who was not far from Xia Dong. Attention, Hongxia 866. Chapter 341. Xia Dong hurriedly said, This is my chauffeur, Uncle. Sorry for the trouble. Don't mention it. Hurry, let's go home. Although Fu Qinghai was old, his legs were very agile. He walked briskly towards the town. The old woman put down her work and stood up. She slowly looked up at Xia Dong. Her gaze was a little complicated, and there was an inexplicable sadness in it. She sighed softly. Let's go home. The courtyard was not big, but it was very clean. There was an osmanthus tree in the courtyard. The light yellow petals dotted the green leaves like stars, and the air was filled with a fragrant scent. The tree was as thick as a bowl and looked like it had been planted for at least 10 years. Xia Dong could not help but be in a daze. She remembered that there was such a thick tree in the courtyard where she lived when she was young. Every time the osmanthus flowers bloomed, her mother would make osmanthus wine balls for her. She would sit under the osmanthus tree and feed her spoonful by spoonful. Unknowingly, the corners of her eyes were a little wet. The osmanthus flowers were still there, but the warm embrace that hugged her was no longer there. The old woman leaned against the door and looked at Xia Dong, standing in front of the osmanthus tree in a daze. A flash of pain quickly flashed across her cloudy eyes. She quickly lowered her head and walked into the room. A few minutes later, the old woman walked out with a small coffee table. Xia Dong saw this and quickly went forward to help her. The old woman pointed at the osmanthus tree. "Put under the tree. The scenery outside is good." "Okay." Xia Dong placed the coffee table under the osmanthus tree and helped to bring a small chair over. The old woman went into the kitchen and made a pot of osmanthus tea. The yellow tea slowly poured into a transparent glass, and the aroma filled the air. The three of them sat around the coffee table. Silence. Xia Dong looked up at the osmanthus tree and smiled. "Auntie, you like osmanthus trees too?" The old woman's tone was indifferent. "Yes, my child likes osmanthus. When she was young, every time the osmanthus flowers bloomed, she liked to ask me to make osmanthus wine balls for her." Xia Dong's smile widened, and her eyes were covered with a layer of mist. "When I was young, I also liked to pester my mother to make osmanthus wine balls." The old woman smiled and said gently, "Your mother must be very happy to have such an outstanding daughter like you." Xia Dong's vision was blurred by tears. She couldn't even see the figure in front of her clearly. She choked slightly and said, "My mother has passed away. She didn't see me grow up, let alone enjoy a day of happiness." The old woman lowered her eyes and picked up the teacup to hide the sadness in her eyes, but she couldn't hide her slightly trembling fingers. "Wife, I'm back." An old voice broke the silence in the courtyard. Fu Chenghai pushed open the courtyard door and entered. He was carrying bags of vegetables with a simple smile on his face. Xia Dong raised her head and felt that this scene was somewhat familiar. She couldn't help but frown and ponder. Fu Chenghai quickened his pace and walked towards them. He said cheerfully, "Sit down, I'll go cook." The old woman stood up. "I'll go. You stay here and chat with the guests for a while." Fu Chenghai touched his head honestly, and the wrinkles on his face smoothed out. He smiled and said, "That's true. My cooking isn't as good as yours. You can go in first. Call me if you need my help." A light suddenly flashed through Xia Dong's mind. She suddenly widened her eyes and stared at Fu Chenghai. Her voice trembled. "Uncle Fu, is that you? Uncle Fu?" Fu Chenghai and the old woman froze at the same time. Xia Dong suddenly stood up and grabbed Fu Chenghai's hands. "Uncle Fu, I'm Xia. Xia Dong, do you still remember me?" Fu Chenghai's face suddenly turned pale. He didn't know what to do and pushed Xia Dong's hand away. This, I don't know what you're talking about," Xia Dong said excitedly. "Uncle Fu, I remember you. You must be Uncle Fu. We used to live in the same courtyard. You used to help my mother set up the stall. My mother's name is Xiaoling. Do you remember?" Fu Chenghai stood there dumbfounded. His lips moved, but he didn't say a word for a long time. "Uncle Fu, what's wrong?" Xia Dong was certain that he was Fu Dehai from 20 years ago. Although he looked old now, there was still a shadow of the past in his eyes, and his actions were exactly the same as in the past. Fu Chenghai turned his head stiffly and glanced at the old woman, who was also stunned. He sighed deeply in his heart and forced a smile on his face. He pretended to be surprised and said, Xia, so it's you. A girl changes 18 times between childhood and womanhood. I didn't recognize you." Xia Dong laughed. "Uncle Fu, I didn't expect you to change your name. Long time no see. How have you been?" Good, I've been good." Fu Chenghai hurriedly answered, and then gave the old woman a look. "Wife, hurry up and get busy in the kitchen. It's getting late." Xia Dong quickly said, "Auntie, let me help you." Fu Chenghai stopped her. No, just let your auntie do it. You are a guest today. Sit down and chat with me." The old woman picked up the bag of vegetables and walked silently to the kitchen. Xia Dong poured a cup of tea for Fu Chenghai and said, "Uncle Fu, Annie looks very familiar. Did she used to live in our alley?" Fu Chenghai's forehead was covered in cold sweat. He smiled uncomfortably. "No, I met her after I moved away." Xia Dong asked, "By the way, I haven't asked you why you moved away from the courtyard back then. Weren't you living well there?" Fu Chenghai looked a bit embarrassed and stammered, Back then, I was very nice to you and your mother. A lot of people gossiped, so I moved away. Back then, Xia Ling was abandoned by Xia Zhenqing. She took her daughter with her and painstakingly set up a food stall. Fu Qinghai pitied the mother and daughter and came to help almost every day. In the end, Xia Ling rented a shop and opened a small restaurant. He simply closed the shop and went to the restaurant to help her. At that time, they worked under the same roof and lived in the same courtyard. It did attract a lot of criticism. Even the young Xia Dong thought that he would become her stepfather. But at that time, he suddenly moved away from the courtyard. Not long after, Xiaoling's restaurant was smashed. Not long after, she set a fire and burned herself to death in her room. From then on, Xiaodong had never seen Fu Qinghai again. She did not expect to see him today. She had mixed feelings. She was happy and sad, because when she saw Uncle Fu, she could not help but think of her mother. Fu Qinghai coughed and interrupted Xia Dong's memories. Xia, how have you been all these years? Xia Dong smiled. Pretty good. I'm a mother of 4 now. You've already met Xiao Yi and her siblings. I also have a daughter who's only a few months old. Fu Qinghai nodded with relief and asked, Does your husband treat you well? Xia Dong's smile widened. Pretty good. Fu Qinghai said good. He was very emotional. Time flies. Back then, you were only this tall. He gestured in the air. Now, you have children. Sigh, we're getting old. Xia Dong was also emotional and full of questions. Uncle Fu, why did you move here? Fu Qinghai was stunned and said slowly, Back then, your mother passed away. I didn't have a job in the city, so I moved to the countryside to farm and raise chickens. It's not bad to live a peaceful life like this. The two of them chatted for more than half an hour before the old woman called Fu Qinghai's name from the kitchen. Fu Qinghai smiled. Your aunt is done cooking. You can cook first. I'll help set the table. During dinner, Fu Qinghai enthusiastically asked her and Leng Shui to eat more. He even scooped a bowl of hot chicken soup for them. The chicken soup was delicious. After swallowing it, there was a sweet taste left in the mouth. If one did not pay attention, they would not notice it at all. Xia Dong's expression changed. When she was a child, her mother always liked to add some wolfberries and dates to make chicken soup. The taste was exactly the same as this chicken soup. Even though she had not drunk it for many years, she still remembered this familiar taste. Her fingers trembled and the spoon in her hand fell into the bowl. Her heart almost stopped beating. She stared at the old woman's face without blinking. Although she had aged a lot and there were still scars on her face, her eyebrows were somewhat similar to the young Xiaoling. She widened her eyes in disbelief and opened her mouth slightly. She wanted to say something, but her throat seemed to be blocked by cotton and she could not say anything. Xia, what's wrong? Fu Qinghai asked worriedly when he saw her pale face and strange expression. The old woman's eyes were also filled with worry. Xia Dong's eyelashes fluttered, and tears quickly gathered in her eyes. A teardrop rolled down from her eye and fell into the bowl of chicken soup. She opened her mouth and cried out in a heart-wrenching voice, Mom! The old woman's body suddenly froze and the chopsticks in her hand fell to the ground. Xia Dong threw herself at her and hugged her tightly. She burst into tears. Mom, you're still alive, aren't you? The old woman let her hug her and slowly closed her eyes. Her voice was hoarse. I'm not your mom. You got the wrong person. No, I didn't recognize the wrong person. You're my mother. Only my mother knows that I like osmanthus wine and meatballs. Only my mother puts wolfberries and jujubes in her chicken soup. Mom, don't hide it from me anymore. I'm your daughter. How could you hide it from me? Xia Dong cried so hard that it was as if she wanted to cry out all the grievances she had suffered over the years. 2 streaks of tears flowed from the old woman's tightly shut eyes. She shook her head and denied it. I'm not. Your mom is already dead. Xia Dong held her shoulders and stared at her with teary eyes. She screamed at the top of her lungs, We couldn't find your body in the fire that year. Don't lie to me anymore. Why? Why won't you admit it? Mom, do you know how sad I was? Why did you abandon me? Beauty novel Songshu 566. Chapter 342. You've got the wrong person. I'm not. The old woman shook her head as tears streamed down her face. She shut her eyes tightly and didn't dare to look at her. Mom, open your eyes and look at me. I'm your Xia. How could you be so heartless as to leave me all alone? Do you know how I've been through all these years? I've always felt guilty. I feel like I've been a burden to you and made your life so difficult. That's why you couldn't take it and wanted to commit suicide. Mom, look at me. Mom. Xiaodong shook her shoulders as tears streamed down her face. The old woman clenched her fists tightly and gritted her teeth, refusing to let go. Fu Qinghai was also in tears. He wiped the tears off his face and said, Wife, don't hide it from your child anymore. Acknowledge your child. Xiaodong's expression was almost hysterical. She shook Xiaoling's shoulders forcefully. Mom, did you hear that? Uncle Fu has already acknowledged your identity. Don't hide it from me anymore. Xiaoling slowly opened her eyes. Seeing her daughter's heartbroken face, she couldn't hold it in anymore. She hugged her tightly in her arms and cried bitterly. For a moment, there was only the sound of crying in the room. After a long time, Xiaodong wiped Xiaoling's tears with a tissue. She said in a choked voice, Mom, I'm so happy that you're still alive. Mom, what difficulties are you facing? Why don't you want to acknowledge me? Xiaoling sighed bitterly. Xia, I've already become like this. I just don't want to be a burden to you. I'm content to know that you're doing well. Mom, you're so silly. You left me so early. This has always been a regret in my heart. No matter how well I live, it can't make up for this regret. As Xiaodong spoke, tears streamed down her face again. Mom, why did you commit suicide back then? Was it really because of me? Silly girl, how could it be because of you? Xiao Ling caressed her daughter's face lovingly and said in a choked voice, For you, no matter how hard and tiring it was, I would have persevered. I actually didn't understand what was going on with the fire. That day, when you went to collect your acceptance letter, I suddenly felt a little dizzy at home. I was about to sleep for a while. I didn't expect that there would be a fire. If Uncle Fu hadn't arrived at that time, I would have been dead. Mom, Xiaodong hugged her tightly, with lingering fear. Fu Qinghai said, That day, I knew that you received your acceptance letter and believed that you would do well in the exam. So I bought some groceries and went to your house to celebrate with your mother. I didn't expect to see a sea of fire when I entered the house. The quilt was on fire, and your mother was still lying on the bed, unconscious. I quickly pulled her out of the bed and carried her out the back door. He paused and continued. Later, I sent your mother to the hospital. When I returned to the Sihiyuan, the firemen had already put out the fire. Only ruins were left. I looked for you for a long time, but I couldn't find you. So I went back to the hospital to take care of your mother. When I heard that your mother had committed suicide by setting the fire, I realized that something was wrong. I wanted to clarify the rumors, but your mother stopped me. Xiao Ling sighed and added, At that time, my face was burned and my legs were crippled. Because I inhaled too much carbon dioxide and dust, it caused a serious lung infection. I thought I wouldn't live for more than a few days, and that I would die sooner or later. It was better for you to accept the reality of my death as soon as possible. Xia, don't blame me. I just didn't want to implicate you. How could a teenage girl take care of a seriously injured mother? Xiao Ling hid it from Xiaodong because she didn't want to implicate her daughter. But she didn't expect that Fu Qinghai would stay by her side and spend all his money to treat her illness. In the end, she was saved. Fu Qinghai said, Your mother was treated in the hospital for a long time. She kept an eye on your situation. When she heard that you were sent to the orphanage, she was so worried that she couldn't sleep. Later, she heard that your aunt brought you back to her house. She was relieved. Your mother's illness took a full 2 years of treatment before she got better. At that time, we were penniless and had a huge debt. I had no choice but to move to the countryside with your mother. We contracted a piece of land to farm and plant fruit trees. It took us 3 years to pay off all our debts. Xiaodong was grateful and sad. With tears in her eyes, she bowed to him solemnly. Uncle Fu, you took care of my mother all these years. You're my father from now on. I will be filial to you and my mother. Xia, what are you doing? Get up. Fu Qinghai hurriedly helped her up. We're family. Don't be so distant. Your mother and I are happy as long as you're doing well. Xiaodong was so touched that tears fell from her eyes. She said sincerely, Dad? Okay. Dad is very happy. I haven't been so happy in a long time. Fu Qinghai was so excited that tears filled his eyes. They were busy catching up and the food had already turned cold. Leng Shui quietly brought the food to the kitchen. After heating it, she brought it out again. The three of them had calmed down a lot. Fu Qinghai quickly helped to bring the food and said apologetically, Miss Leng, I'm so sorry to ask you to do these things. Leng Shui, who had always been cold, curled her lips miraculously. It's okay. Uncle, Annie, madam, let's eat. Fu Qinghai smiled. Okay, let's eat. Wife, since we are so happy today, why don't you let Xia have a few drinks with me? Xia Ling said reproachfully. If you want to drink, drink by yourself. Xia can't drink. Her cheeks turn red even when she eats wine balls, not to mention alcohol. Fu Qinghai laughed heartily. Ha, that's true. Then I'll drink by myself. Miss Leng, do you drink? Leng Shui said politely. Uncle, I can't drink. I have to drive later. Fu Qinghai patted his head. Look at my memory. I almost forgot. When it was almost dusk, Xiaodong reluctantly said goodbye to Xia Ling and her husband. The two of them sent her to town. Xia Ling held her hands. Xia, live well with Bailey Han. Don't worry about us. Mom, Dad, take care. I'll come back to visit you soon. Xiaodong hugged Xia Ling. The car had already driven far away, but Xiaodong could still see the two of them standing by a tree outside the village, staring at her. She couldn't help but feel a lump in her throat. Halfway through the journey, Bailey Han called. His voice was full of concern. Honey, why aren't you home yet? Did something happen? Xiaodong smiled and said softly, I'm already on the way. I'll be home in about half an hour. Honey, I have good news to tell you. Bailey Han stood by the balcony with his phone in his hand. He looked at the dark sky and listened to her slowly tell him what had happened. The expression in his deep eyes changed many times. There was shock and heartache, but in the end, it all turned into thick warmth. He couldn't wait to appear in front of her and hold her in his arms. His lips curved into a warm smile. Honey, next time, I'll go with you to visit mother-in-law and father-in-law. Okay. Xiaodong's eyes were already wet with tears when he said this simple word. The BMW drove to the entrance of the manor. Under the dim sky, a tall and handsome figure stood at the iron gate. He was wearing white casual clothes and had his hands in his trouser pockets as he waited leisurely. Xiaodong could not help but smile when she saw Bailey Han. She opened the car door and walked over to him. She looked up at him. Why are you standing here? I'm here to pick up my wife. Beautiful madam, have you seen my wife? Bailey Han pulled her into his arms with a smile and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. Xiaodong smiled. Be careful not to let your wife see you. She will be jealous. Really? So my wife is jealous of herself. Bailey Han held her in his arms and walked towards the villa. His mellow and sexy voice was full of laughter. So what if I am? He mischievously pinched his waist. This caused him to laugh in a low voice. His magnetic laughter echoed in the empty path. After dinner, the family was chatting in the living room. Xiaodong announced her important discovery to the whole family, and the living room was filled with sighs. Old Madam was very reasonable and said that she would make some time to visit Xia Ling and her husband in person. Xiaodong knew that Old Madam was old and could not stand a long journey, so she planned to invite her mother and Uncle Fu to the house. When they went to bed that night, Xiaodong leaned against Bailey Han's arms and discussed with him. Honey, my mother and Uncle Fu are old, and they live in Xiushui village, so it is not convenient for me to take care of them. I want to bring them to the city. What do you think? Bailey Han rubbed his chin against her silky hair and looked at her dotingly. Okay, my villa has been empty all this time. Please move in with me. It is close to the mansion, and it will be convenient for us to take care of them. Xiaodong could not help but laugh. You want them to live in your villa? No. He raised his eyebrows. Why not? My parents are both honest people. They will feel uncomfortable if they live in such a luxurious place. I was planning to rent out my previous apartment, but I did not have time to deal with it. So, It has been empty all this time. Let them move in there. Bailey Han thought for a while. Okay, we will listen to your arrangement. Your previous apartment is close to Aunt's home, and they have not seen each other for so many years, so they can get to know each other better. Yes, that is my plan too. I called Aunt on the way home and told her that my mother is still alive. She can't wait to see her. Speaking of this matter, Xia Dong's eyes shone with excitement. She was full of energy, as if she had been injected with chicken blood. The consequence of being so excited was that she could not sleep. Bailey Han bit her earlobe and whispered, "Honey, there's a way to cure your insomnia." What? Do/love/do. So erotic. A certain someone had already turned into a wolf and devoured her over and over again. Ad. Hongcha 866. Chapter 343. It was the weekend. Xia Dong and Bailey Han led the children, as well as Xia Yun and her husband, to Xiushui village to visit Xia Ling and her husband. When the two old sisters met, they hugged each other and cried. Xia Dong and the others also had red eyes. It was a touching scene. The children called out Grandpa and Grandma in their childish voices. The two elders hugged the children tightly in their arms and couldn't help but cry. After waiting for more than 20 years, the day of family reunion was finally here. Xiaoling was happy and sad at the same time. As she reminisced about the past with her family, she wiped away her tears again and again. Fu Qinghai comforted Xiaoling. "Honey, we're happy today. Let's not talk about those unhappy things." Xiaoling nodded repeatedly. Yes, let's not talk about those unhappy things. Xiao Yun, Ming Yuan, thank you for taking care of Xia all these years. I want to thank you. Xia Yun held her hand and said, "Sister, we're sisters. We're family. How can you say that? Xia is also Ming Yuan's and my daughter. If we don't treat her well, who else should we treat well?" Gao Ming Yuan smiled and said, "Sis, you don't have to be so polite with us." Xiaoling was so touched that she didn't know what to say. She just held Xia Yun's hand tightly. Nothing needed to be said about their sisterly love. Bailey Han treated Xia Dong's parents as if they were his own. Although it was their first official meeting, they weren't distant at all. He called them Dad and Mom affectionately. From time to time, he would tell some interesting stories, making the elders laugh heartily. For the first time, Xia Dong realized that he was actually quite humorous. The current him was completely different from the cold and emotionless man of the past. At the dining table, Bailey Han poured a glass of wine for Gao Mingyuan and Fu Qinghai. He also poured a glass for Xia Yun and Xiaoling. Then he stood up with his glass and said seriously, "Dad, Mom, you've worked hard all these years. When Xia and I got married, you weren't able to attend. Today, I toast to you as your son-in-law to thank you for taking care of Xia." His toast was equivalent to a toast to his son-in-law. After drinking it, it meant that the parents acknowledged him as their son-in-law. Fu Qinghai was an honest person and didn't have any ulterior motives. He raised his glass and drank it in one gulp. Xiaoling held her drink with a serious expression. "I once had a failed marriage. I don't want my daughter to follow in my footsteps. Can you promise that you'll treat my daughter well for the rest of your life?" In front of the children, her aunt and uncle, Xia Dong felt a little uncomfortable and secretly tugged at Xiaoling's clothes. Bailey Han's lips curved into a smile. His deep gaze landed on Xia Dong, and he said slowly, "Mom, it's better to do well than to say well. I will use my actions to prove to you that Xia will never regret marrying me. In this lifetime, I, Bailey Han, will never have another woman besides Xia Dong." "All right, I'm relieved to hear that." Xiaoling nodded her head in satisfaction before downing her drink in one gulp. After dinner, Xia Dong and Xia Yun helped Xia Ling clean up the dishes. Xia Ling smiled and said, "Xiao Yun, you should rest. Let Xia help me clean up." Having received her mother's approval, Xia Dong was overjoyed. She cleaned up the dishes and wiped the table. Xiaoling couldn't help but laugh when she saw how happy she was. Silly girl. She's so happy even when she's working. Xia Dong laughed happily. "Mom, you have no idea. I've dreamed of cooking and washing dishes with you like this for many years. Really? Xiao Ling smiled, and the wrinkles on her face relaxed. Today was the happiest day of her life in more than 20 years. Of course it's true. Xia Dong finished washing the dishes and wiped her hands. She hugged her mother's arm and leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. Mom, I still want to eat your osmanthus wine balls. I've been thinking about it for many years. Xiao Ling poked her forehead and teased. I think that's the main point. Mom, it's good that you know. Don't expose me, you silly girl. Under the sunlight, the figures of the mother and daughter, snuggled up to each other, were projected on the window glass. It was warm and refreshing. In the courtyard, Bailey Han was sitting around the coffee table with a few elders and chatting. Most of the time, it was Fu Qinghai and Gao Mingyuan who were talking while Xia Yin played with the children. Bailey Han didn't feel bored. Instead, he listened attentively and occasionally interrupted to express his opinion. Fu Qinghai and the others liked such a polite young man like him. Through the window, Xiaoling saw Bailey Han listening with a smile. She patted Xiaodong's arm and laughed softly. Ahan is such a good child. Mom doesn't have to worry about you anymore. Xiaodong helped her to a chair by the window and smiled. Then why did you make things difficult for him just now? Oh, why? Do you feel bad for him? Xiaoling poked her forehead with her finger. Silly girl, I did it on purpose. I made him promise in front of us to let him know that you still have the support of us elders. If he dares to bully you, we definitely won't let him off. Xiaodong hugged her arm. Mom, he won't. I believe that he will treat me well for the rest of his life. Xiaoling's eyes dimmed, and she smiled bitterly. The phrase, the rest of your life, sounds simple, but it's actually very difficult. How many people give up halfway? And how many people forget their vows of eternal love? Xiaodong knew that she was thinking about her marriage with Xia Zhenqing. She hugged her tighter and said gently, Mom, since I've made my choice, I have to believe in him. Xiao Ling stroked her hair, and the dimness in her eyes faded. She smiled and said gently, My daughter is grown up and is sensible. Xia, you're right. Since you've made your choice, you have to believe in him and live well with Ahan. Xiaodong's eyes were smiling as he replied, Yes. The mother and daughter leaned against each other quietly for a while. Then Xiaodong thought of something and said, Mom, do I have a younger brother? Xiao Ling sighed. Yes, your Uncle Fu and I have a child called Fu Wei. He's already 16 years old, and he's working in the city. She sounded helpless. Xiaodong looked up from her arms. Mom, did something happen to Ah Wei? Xiaoling shook her head and looked troubled. Ah Wei is too disobedient. He doesn't like to study and dropped out of school in junior high. He has a bunch of bad friends and is always causing trouble. Your Uncle Fu and I have a headache because of him. We don't know what to do with him. Fu Wei was their son. When he was young, he was spoiled. Coupled with the bad boys in the village, he learned how to lie from a young age. He skipped classes every day and went to the internet cafe and arcade. The couple did not know about those things, and Fu Wei was able to fool them with a few words. It was not until he got into a fight with a classmate and the teacher invited them to the school for a parent-teacher meeting that they realized the seriousness of the matter. However, it was already too late. Fu Wei was given a few serious demerits by the school, and if he made another mistake, he would be expelled. The naughty boy was beaten up by Fu Qinghai, but he was still disobedient. He hung out with the gangsters outside the school and robbed the rich students in the school. After his deeds were exposed, he was persuaded to leave the school by the teacher, and no matter how Fu Qinghai pleaded, it was useless. Fu Qinghai and Xiaoling's hair turned white at that time. Fu Qinghai had planned to transfer Fu Wei to another school, but Fu Wei refused to go to school and ran away from home to work in a city. He came home once every 10 days or half a month, and every time he came home, he would ask for money. The couple did not know what to do with him. Xiaodong thought for a while and said, Mom, Wei is still young. He is only 16 years old. I will go back and think of a way with Ahan to persuade him to come back and continue with his studies. Xiaoling sighed helplessly. Now he's a sore point for me and your Uncle Fu. Xiaodong comforted her and said, Mom, there's one more thing I want to discuss with you. What is it? Tell me. Well, You and Uncle Fu are both old and need someone to take care of you. Ahan and I want you to move to the city. I have a 3-bedroom apartment in the city. It is just big enough for you and Wei to live in, and it will be convenient for us to take care of you. What do you think? Xia Ling was startled. This is not a good idea. Why not? I'm your daughter, so I should take care of you. Mom, my apartment is only 2 kilometers away from Annie's house. You can get to Annie's house after taking a few bus stops. It's also convenient for you to visit each other. Disagree, okay? Xiaodong hugged her mother's arm and begged. Xiaoling was actually very happy that her daughter and son-in-law were thinking about the two of them. However, she still had many worries. Xia, will Han's family be unhappy that you're helping your family like this? Xiaodong laughed. Then you're worried for nothing. I already discussed it with my family last night, and they all agreed. Han even said that you and Uncle Fu can move into his villa. Xiaoling said, no way, we're not used to living in a villa. That's what I said too, so Han gave up on the idea. Xiaodong laughed happily and swung her arms. Mom, can you talk to Uncle Fu and ask him to move to the city? Okay, I will discuss it with your Uncle Fu. But soon she was worried again. What about our strawberry garden? We still have a lot of harvest every year. Xiaodong suggested. How about we contract it to someone else? I've been doing it for more than 10 years. I really can't bear to do it. Mom, you and Uncle Fu have worked so hard for so many years. It is time for you to enjoy life. Don't think about those things anymore. Xia Ling shook her head. It is not that easy to move to the city. We don't have jobs. How are we going to support ourselves? Which of our daily necessities does not cost money? Xiaodong did not know whether to laugh or cry. Oh, my dear mother, your daughter is rich now, and she is enough to support you too. Please, don't worry so much, okay? Xiaoling knocked on her forehead and said impatiently, I know that Han is rich, but you can't always help your family. Even if their family doesn't have any opinions, outsiders will. Attention, Hongcha 866. Chapter 344. Mom, it's my own money. When I was in Japan, I saved up a large sum of money. It's enough to support the two of you. Besides, I also have 10% of the shares of Shenghao Group. Every year, the dividends are tens of millions. Shenghao Group? Isn't that Han's company? Xia Ling was surprised. Xiaodong nodded. When we got married, Han transferred 10% of the shares of the company to me. She wasn't going to tell her mother that Han's original words at the time were to give the money to her as pocket money, tens of millions of pocket money. Of course, he also gave her a few extra credit cards for her to use as she pleased. Xia Ling was flabbergasted. Clearly, this matter had exceeded her understanding. So, you don't have to worry about money. Just move to the city. Xiaodong said with a smile. Mom, I will take it that you agree. You must try to persuade Uncle Fu. Xiaoling came back to herself and felt that Bailey Han was a very reliable son-in-law. If a man was willing to give his wife the financial power, it meant that he was not selfish and truly loved this woman. Especially in those rich families, there were some women who married into rich families, but their husbands were not willing to transfer their assets to them. Since Xiushui village was far away from the city, Xiaoling had already prepared dinner and asked them to go home after dinner. The two cars drove away, and Xiaoling and her husband stood at the entrance of the village, waving their hands. It was not until they could no longer be seen that Xiaodong turned around reluctantly. Bailey Han smiled and said gently, Have you mentioned to mother-in-law about moving? Yes, I have. Mom agreed. When Dad agrees, we will help them move immediately. Xiaodong could not wait one more day. She really wanted to live closer to them. Bailey Han smiled lovingly. Okay, we will go to your apartment tomorrow and ask the furniture company to send you any furniture you need. Honey, you are so nice. Xiaodong's eyes sparkled. She lowered her voice to avoid the 3 pairs of ears in the back seat. Bailey Han pointed at his cheek and cooperated with her by lowering his voice. A reward. Xiaodong whispered, Focus on driving. I'll give it to you when we get home. He chuckled softly. You said it yourself. I want the same reward as last night. Her face heated up. Xiao Bao suddenly coughed, loudly with a strange expression on his face. Little Wingsy also coughed and winked at him. Xiao Guai giggled. Daddy, Mommy, we heard it. Xiaodong was embarrassed, but she also found it funny and couldn't help but laugh. Bailey Han sighed helplessly. The three of you need to learn how to play dumb. The three of them shouted in unison. Next time, we'll definitely play dumb. That's good. Bailey Han was pleased with their strong learning ability. Xiaodong bit her lip and laughed even louder. The next day, the couple drove to Xiaodong's small apartment with the three little kids. They took inventory of the furniture in the house and made a list of furniture that needed to be added. They also packed the things that the children needed into 2 boxes and stuffed them into the car. In the end, Bailey Han personally drew a simple renovation sketch. He planned to renovate the house and change it into an environment suitable for the elderly. After he finished drawing, he said, I'll get Lu Ziheo to contact a trustworthy renovation company to complete the renovation as soon as possible. The children were playing in the living room. Xiaodong took the opportunity to kiss him on the cheek as a reward. She smiled and teased, Honey, I didn't expect you to have such skills. This is nothing. This is my villa. I drew all the decorations and sketches myself. Bailey Han bit her lips and raised his eyebrows proudly with an expression that said, Hurry up and praise me. Xiaodong recalled the first time she moved into his villa 5 years ago. When she saw the black marble living room and the love-struck guest room, she felt emotional. She chuckled and rubbed his cheek. The villa's overall style is low-key, but it's interesting. It's really your taste. Honey, you're amazing. Come, give me another kiss. He shamelessly moved closer to her. She quickly jumped away and ran to the door. She made a face at him. It's broad daylight. Aren't you embarrassed? Bailey Han raised his eyebrows slightly and smirked. He said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, Who was the one crying and begging me to do embarrassing things last night? Xiaodong's face suddenly turned red. She lowered her voice and bared her teeth. I told you to stop. His smile widened. He stretched out his arm and gestured elegantly with his finger. Honey, come here. Only a fool would go over. Xiaodong glared at him angrily. Looking at his smirk, he definitely didn't have good intentions. She didn't want to walk right into his trap. She turned and ran, but she was still a step too late. A pair of slender arms passed through her waist and pulled her into a broad chest at lightning speed. With a bang sound, the door was kicked shut by him. He held her in his arms, his slender fingers caressing her lips that she was biting slightly due to her nervousness. His face was extremely close to hers, and his warm breath blew on her cheek. He chuckled softly. Wifey, what should we do? It seems like I can't resist your charm anymore. His gentle words of love made her face even redder. Coupled with the caressing of his fingers on her face, her entire body went limp. Leaning on his chest, she pouted coquettishly while breathing unsteadily. Stop fooling around. The children are still outside. He hugged her tightly and said in a low voice, I know. I just want to satisfy my craving. He lowered his head and kissed her lips gently. After their breathing stabilized, the first thing Xiaodong did was look for a mirror. In the mirror, her lips were red and slightly swollen. It was easy to think of something, and she couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. He accepted it and walked out of the room with his arm around her slender waist. Actually, Xiaodong felt guilty and thought too much. The children had long thought that it was normal for Daddy and Mommy to kiss each other. It was their fault for being so mushy. That day, Xiaoling called and said that Fu Qinghai had agreed to move to the city. Xiaodong was very happy. She discussed with Xiaoling and decided to postpone the move to the end of the month because the house had to be renovated. Bailey Han quickly contacted the renovation company. The renovation this time was very simple. It mainly focused on the placement of the interior furniture and the overall comfort level. No paint, or other materials were used because those things would emit substances that were harmful to the human body. It needed to be empty for a period of time before people could move in. That would delay the moving in. 2 days later, Xiaodong bought 2 sets of clothes and some supplements for her parents to visit them. This time, Bailey Han was at work, and the children had to go to school. She was the only one there. She wanted to give the two elders a surprise, so she didn't tell them in advance. When she walked to the door of the courtyard, she realized that it wasn't locked. Just as she was about to push the door open, she suddenly heard an argument from inside. "Oh, wait, stop it right now. That passbook contains your mother's and my coffin money. Stupid old man, let go. If I don't return the money to them, they will chop off my hands. Do you understand? Oh, wait, why did you gamble again? Why are you so disobedient? Get out of my way, stupid old woman." Ah, there was the sound of someone falling to the ground. Xia Dong couldn't hold it in anymore. She was furious. Bang! She kicked the door open and barged in with a livid face. When she saw the scene in front of her, Xia Dong was furious. Her mother was lying on the ground, and her father hurriedly went to help her up. Her half-brother, Fu Wei, only cared about the passbook in his hand and didn't care about the lives of the two elders. "Mom, how are you? Are you okay?" Xia Dong quickly ran over and put down the things in her hand to help Fu Chenghai help Xiaoling up. Xiaoling was full of bitterness. She turned her head away and wiped her tears. She kept shaking her head. I'm fine. Fu Wei put the passbook in his pants pocket and looked at Xia Dong up and down. "Who are you? You're quite pretty." Xia Dong stood up, her eyes burning with anger. She quickly walked in front of him and raised her hand to slap his roguish face. She gritted her teeth and said, "Open your eyes and take a good look. I'm your sister, Xia Dong." Fu Wei was caught off guard by her slap and was stunned. He quickly reacted and raised his hand angrily to hit back. "Stop!" Fu Chenghai roared. "You bastard, if you really dare to hit her, don't ever come back to this house again." Fu Wei didn't take his father's words seriously. Instead, he was furious and didn't hesitate to slap him. He shouted, "Old man, I'm your biological son. Why are you helping this bastard?" "You..." Fu Chenghai was so angry that he almost fainted. Xiaoling was even angrier and sadder. She limped towards her son and daughter. "You bastard, stop it right now." But after all, distant water couldn't quench a present thirst. Seeing that Fu Wei's heavy slap was about to land on Xia Dong's face, Xiaoling became even more anxious and staggered over. Fu Chenghai also came over to stop her, but Xia Dong suddenly grabbed Fu Wei's wrist tightly. At first, Fu Wei didn't take her seriously and reached out to hit her with his other hand. In the end, she also grabbed his wrist. His face gradually turned from red to white. "Ouch, ouch, ouch. Hurry and let go. Damn it, this woman looks so thin and weak. How is she so strong?" Xia Dong stared at him coldly. "Apologize to Mom and Dad." Fu Wei's forehead was covered in cold sweat from the pain. He hurriedly said, "Dad, Mom, I'm sorry. I was wrong." Fu Chenghai and Xiaoling were stunned. They didn't expect their daughter to be so powerful. Now can you let go of me, sister?" Fu Wei's wrist hurt so much that he squeezed out an ugly smile. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 345. Xia Dong sneered. "Now you're calling me sister? Didn't you just call me a bastard? Didn't you say it so smoothly?" "I'm sorry, sister. I was wrong. Please let me go. I'm your brother," Fu Wei said pitifully. Xia Dong looked at her half-brother carefully. He was only 16 years old and had a hint of childishness between his eyebrows. He was quite handsome, but he had a lot of bad habits that needed to be cured. Otherwise, his life would be over. She grabbed his wrist tightly and had no intention of letting go. She stared at him with her sharp eyes and said in a low voice, "How did you owe money? How much do you owe?" Fu Wei's hands were grabbed and were in so much pain that he didn't have the ability to think anymore. He told her all the mistakes he had made. "I gambled with someone and lost 100,000. 100,000? This amount of money was not a small sum for the poor Fu Chenghai and his wife. The two of them supported each other and almost fainted. Xia Dong was furious. This brother of hers was really useless. Of all things to learn, he had to learn gambling. She suddenly lifted her leg and kicked his knee. His legs went soft, and he fell to his knees with a thud. She pulled his wrist hard, and he grimaced in pain. Ouch, ouch, ouch. Sis, please spare me, Xia Dong said angrily. Kneel in front of Dad and Mom now, and reflect. Yes. Dad, Mom, I was wrong. Hurry up and ask Sister to let go of me. I'm going to die from the pain. Fu Wei started to cry. His eyes were filled with tears, and his face was twisted in pain. He looked extremely pathetic. Xiaoling saw her son in such a pitiful state and couldn't bear it. Just as she was about to say something, Fu Chenghai suddenly grabbed her wrist and shouted, You bastard, your sister is right. You have to reflect today. Xiaoling was shocked, and her mind instantly cleared up. She suppressed the pity in her heart. Her son was stubborn, and no one could control him. Now that Xia could control him, it was a good thing. She hoped that she could pull him back from the wrong path. Xia Dong flung Fu Wei's wrist away. She didn't care about his crying face and strode to her parents. She brought 2 chairs for them to sit down and whispered in Fu Chenghai's ear, Dad, if you don't mind, let me handle this. Fu Chenghai couldn't wait for Xia Dong to tame his son. He nodded and deliberately said in a loud voice, Xia, I'll leave that bastard to you. Teach him a lesson. Don't worry about us. Fu Wei, he cried. Dad, Mom, Sis, I know I was wrong, but... Sister, Xia Dong said coldly. Wei, how long have you been working? Fu Wei was stunned. He didn't expect her to suddenly ask such an irrelevant question. Xia Dong said sternly, I'm asking you, how long have you been working? 2 years. How much savings do you have now? No. Xia Dong's tone turned cold. You don't have a single cent? Fu Wei shrunk his neck and shivered. Yes. He dropped out of school at the age of 14. After that, he ran to the city to work. Regular factories didn't dare to take in child laborers. He finally found a job as a waiter in a small restaurant. However, because the salary was too low and the work was too hard, he ran away after a month. After that, he mingled with a group of hooligans. He collected protection money, fought with people, and did a lot of petty theft. However, because he squandered money whenever he was rich, he didn't save a single cent. Instead, he often asked his parents for money. Especially after he became addicted to gambling, his behavior became worse. If his parents didn't give him any money, he would openly rob them. Worse, he would even use his fists and legs. Xia Dong slammed the coffee table and said angrily, Fu Wei, you're already 16 years old. You're an adult. You don't do a proper job all day. You only know how to ask your parents for money. Don't you have any sense of shame? Fu Wei suddenly raised his head and stiffened his neck. It's their fault that I'm like this today. Good, very good. I only thought that you were young and ignorant. I didn't expect you to add another one. You're an incompetent idiot who only knows how to push the blame to others. Xia Dong was so angry that her whole body trembled. She pointed at his nose and said, Did your parents force you to drop out of school? Did they force you to fool around with those bastards? Did they force you to gamble and squander money? They are indeed wrong. Their mistake is that they love you too much, spoil you too much, and spoil you too much. Fu Wei's face alternated between red and white. His eyes shot out a venomous light. He gritted his teeth and said, Let me tell you, don't think that you can control me just because I call you sister. You have no right to control me. Xia Dong snorted coldly. Since you call me sister, I have the right to discipline you on behalf of your parents. Fu Wei, listen carefully. Don't even think about taking a single cent from your parents. If you have the ability, earn your own money and return it to those people. Fu Wei's face suddenly changed. He lay on the ground and cried bitterly. Dad, Mom, Sister, you have to save me. The people in the casino are used to being vicious. They will really chop off my hands. As long as you're willing to help me this time, I will turn over a new leaf and become a new person. Xia Dong had to admit that this kid's face changed as quickly as flipping through a book. It would be a great loss to the film industry if he didn't go into acting. She knew that he had been on the wrong path for a long time. Even if she talked until her mouth was dry, he wouldn't be able to change in such a short time. She had to come up with a plan to change his bad habits. She frowned slightly and pondered for a moment. Her tone softened slightly as she said slowly, Wei, go talk to the people in the casino and ask them to give you 3 months. Impossible. They won't even give me 3 days. Fu Wei saw that her tone had relaxed. He crawled to her on his knees and said, Sister, I beg you, please help me. I know you have money. Xiaodong looked at the fawning expression on his face and felt uncomfortable all over. He glared at him and said, Stand up and speak properly. Okay. Thank you, sister. Fu Wei stood up quickly and patted the dust off his knees. He chuckled and said, Sister, can you lend me 100,000 yuan? Xiaodong rejected him immediately. Impossible. You have to earn this money yourself. However, I can introduce you to a job. Your salary will be calculated according to your performance. I guarantee that you can earn 100,000 yuan in 3 months. Sister, they won't even wait for me. For 3 months, Xiaodong glanced at him. Aren't you very talkative? Talk to them. If they really cut off your hands, you won't be able to give them a single cent. On the contrary, if they are willing to give you 3 months, not only will you return them 100,000 yuan, you will also give them an extra 10,000 yuan interest. Why wouldn't they agree to such a good thing? Fu Wei was stunned. An extra 10,000 yuan? Where will the money come from? Earn it yourself. I've already said that your salary will be linked to your efforts. The harder you work, the higher your salary. Fu Wei was very reluctant. Don't tell me it's construction work. It's hard and tiring. I don't want to do it. Xiaodong sneered. Look at how weak you are. Can you do it if I ask you to work at a construction site? What kind of work is that? Let's make it clear first. I won't do any work that requires physical strength. Fu Wei had long been trained to be tough. He didn't even blush when he said this. Xiaodong glanced at him and spat out 2 words. Sales. What? Sales? I always have to smile and please others. I won't do it. Xiaodong said lightly, You have no education, no strength, and no skills. If you don't want to do anything, how are you going to make money? Sales is already the easiest job. If it weren't for the fact that you are my brother, I wouldn't even introduce such a good job to you. Fu Wei muttered unhappily. Then don't introduce the job to me. Just give me the money. Xiaodong's expression changed. Fu Wei, don't make me angry. If you don't learn how to earn your own living, don't even think about getting a single cent from me and Mom. Okay. I'll do it. Fu Wei was worried that he had angered this god of wealth and really didn't care about him anymore. He said helplessly, Tell me, where do you work in sales? Xiaodong gave him an address and said, Wait for me at this cafe tomorrow at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll arrange a job for you then. Also, you have to appease the people in the casino. It's best if you sign an agreement with them that they are not allowed to disturb you or your family for 3 months. When the time is up, you will naturally return the money to them. Understand? Fu Wei nodded carelessly. Yes, I understand. Xiaodong was angry when she saw his attitude. However, Rome wasn't built in a day. She couldn't rush it. She had to train him slowly. Seeing that he couldn't get his parents' money, Fu Wei didn't want to stay at home any longer. He shrugged and said, If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Fu Qinghai scolded. It's not easy for your sister to come back. Let's have a good meal together. Fu Wei rolled his eyes and laughed. Sister, it's not that I don't want to eat with you. It's just that I want to talk to the people in the casino early and appease them. Xiaodong could tell that he didn't want to stay at home. She thought for a while and said, Okay, go ahead. If you want to sign an agreement, look carefully. Don't be fooled. I know. Goodbye, sister. Goodbye, Dad and Mom. He waved his hand and ran away quickly. Fu Qinghai and his wife sighed deeply as they watched his back disappear into the distance. Xiaodong said, Dad, Mom, I went past you to teach Wei a lesson. I hope you don't mind. Fu Qinghai hurriedly said, Xia, don't say that. I'm more than happy that you can control Wei. There's finally someone who can control him. As long as you can pull him back from the wrong path, you can teach him a lesson however you want. Add Xinwu 799. Chapter 346. Xiaodong smiled and said, Dad, Mom, this is what I'm thinking. Let's let Wei earn his own living and let him realize his shortcomings at work. Then, we'll think of a way to persuade him to go back to school. He's still too young, so it's better for him to study for a few more years. Fu Qinghai nodded repeatedly. We'll listen to you, Xia Xia. Fortunately, you're here. Otherwise, your mom and I wouldn't know what to do. Yes, Xia Xia. Mom is also very grateful to you. Xia Ling couldn't help but wipe her tears as she spoke. Xia Dong sat beside her and hugged her shoulders. She said gently, Mom, don't worry. I'll Wei is my younger brother. I'll definitely think of a way to change his bad habits. Mom, don't be sad, okay? Xia Ling looked at her sensible daughter and was very gratified. She patted the back of her hand hard. Fu Qinghai thought for a moment and said, Xia Xia, you said that you'll arrange a job for Ah Wei. Will this work? Xia Dong smiled. No problem, Dad. Don't worry. When they went to bed that night, Xia Dong told Bailey Han about her battle with Fu Wei. In the end, she sighed. Ah Wei is so young. I didn't expect him to become like this. It looks like it'll take a lot of effort to change him. Bailey Han hugged her in his arms and said, Don't worry. I'm still here. I'll show him how powerful I am as his brother-in-law. Xia Dong's lips curled into a smile. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. You're the famous young master of the Dragon Gang. He stroked her hair and smiled. You said that you'll arrange a job for Ah Wei. Don't tell me you want him to enter my company? Her eyes narrowed dangerously. Why? You're not willing? He chuckled softly. Of course not. I'm just worried that if he enters my company, he'll use my name to throw his weight around. Xia Dong frowned. That's right. With his personality, he would really do something like that. Bailey Han reached out to rub the creases between her eyebrows and said gently, Don't worry. I have a way. I have a friend who opened a software development company. They've developed a new hotel management program, and the employees in the marketing department will get a 10% commission if they sell a set of software. As long as Ah Wei is willing to work hard, it won't be hard for him to earn $30,000 a month. She didn't expect that he had already thought of a countermeasure while listening to her story. Xia Dong was extremely touched. She hugged him tightly and rubbed her head against his chest. Hubby, you're the best. My wife's business is also my business. Of course, your husband will go through fire and water without hesitation. Bailey Han was lying flat on his back. He took the opportunity to lift her up and let her lie on top of him. Their bodies fit together without any gap. Xia Dong leaned her head against his chest and listened to his steady heartbeat. She said softly, Hubby, do you think Ah Wei can last for 3 months? His left hand rested on her waist, and his right hand stroked her back. His eyes were filled with tenderness. I don't know either. I hope he can hold on. If he can't, we'll think of a way to make him hold on. She nodded and said helplessly, Ah Wei's matter has made me reflect on myself. I shouldn't spoil the children too much, lest I spoil them. It looks like I'll have to be stricter in the future. Bailey Han chuckled softly. A loving mother and a strict father. You play the good cop, and I play the bad cop. I promise I won't let them go astray. Okay. She looked up and smiled as she kissed his chin. Honey, the conversation is over. It's time for us to exercise. The corners of his lips curled up. He hugged her and turned around, pressing her under his body. He lowered his head and kissed her lips gently. She reached out her arm and hooked it around his neck as she responded passionately. He bit her lips and whispered, Honey, why are you so passionate tonight? She laughed softly. You don't like it? Then I won't be passionate. His kiss became more intense as he blocked her words with his tongue. He used his actions to tell her that he loved her passion to death. At the cafe, Xia Dong looked at the watch on her wrist. Her right hand stirred her coffee occasionally as her gaze fell on the passers-by outside the window. Half an hour had passed since the agreed time, but Fu Wei still hadn't arrived. Xia Dong didn't want to waste any more time, so she dialed his number and said mildly, Ah Wei, where are you? I've been waiting for you for half an hour. Sorry, sis. There was a traffic jam. I'm in the car. I'll be there soon. Xia Dong's tone didn't fluctuate. How much longer? About 10 minutes. After waiting for another 10 minutes, Fu Wei still hadn't arrived. Xia Dong's heart was already burning with anger. She thought that when he arrived later, she would definitely give him a good scolding. After another 5 minutes, Fu Wei ran in, sweating profusely. He sat down opposite her and said while panting, "Sorry, sis. I'm late." Xiaodong had already prepared some words to scold him, but seeing him in such a sorry state, he swallowed them back down. Instead, he pulled out a few napkins and handed them to him. "Wipe yourself." "Thank you, sis." Fu Wei took the napkins and wiped his face a few times. He grinned at her. "Sis, I've already talked to the people at the casino. They'll give me 3 months." Xiaodong was still worried and asked, "Did they make things difficult for you? What were the terms that you agreed on?" Fu Wei raised his chin proudly. "No. According to what we discussed yesterday, I'll give them an extra 10,000 yuan, and they'll give me another 3 months. Are there really no other terms?" "There's really nothing else." Xiaodong was relieved after Fu Wei repeatedly assured her. She took out a business card from her handbag and pushed it in front of him. "This is a software development company. Your brother-in-law has already talked to the manager of the sales department. You can go to work tomorrow, but you have to remember not to expose your relationship with your brother-in-law. More importantly, you can't use your brother-in-law's name to do bad things. Do you understand?" "Understood." Fu Wei took the business card. On it was written, High Technology Company, Limited, Sales Manager Deng Yuexiang. Xiaodong said, "You'll report directly to the sales manager tomorrow. Do you have any formal clothes?" Fu Wei was wearing a flowery shirt and ripped jeans. He had a head of yellow hair that looked like a chicken's nest and a few earrings in his ears. He looked like a delinquent at first glance. He scratched his head. "No." Xiaodong took out a bill from her wallet and placed it on the table. "Let's go. I'll take you to buy clothes." Fu Wei's smile reached his ears. He grinned and said, "Okay. Thank you, sis." Xiaodong took him to the department store. His face fell, and he muttered unhappily, "Buy clothes here? I thought we were going to a high-end clothing store." Xiaodong rolled her eyes at him. "Don't forget that you're just an ordinary employee. Is it appropriate for you to wear an expensive suit to the office?" Okay. You're right. Who asked you to be the one paying?" Xiaodong couldn't be bothered with him. She asked the waiter to bring a few suits of better quality and stuff them into his arms. "Go in and try them on." "Okay." Fu Wei dragged his voice lazily and carried the clothes into the fitting room. Clothes make the man. Fu Wei, who looked like a ruffian, walked out in a suit. He was 1.7 meters tall and looked handsome in the suit. Of course, one had to ignore his messy yellow hair. "Not bad. I'll take these 3. Xiaodong chose 3 suits and 3 shirts. She asked the waiter to pack them up. After swiping her card, she took him to the leather shoe store next door and bought 2 pairs of leather shoes for him. Then, she bought a tie, a belt, and a briefcase. There were few bags of them. Xiaodong walked in front energetically. Fu Wei followed behind her with the big and small bags. Sis, slow down. I can't keep up." Xiaodong turned around and threw him a disdainful look. "You can't even twist this little thing? You call yourself a man? How embarrassing." Fu Wei said unhappily, "These things are quite heavy. Try twisting them if you don't believe me." Xiaodong glanced at him and said indifferently, "The strawberries that Dad and Mom packed were much heavier than these things. Have you ever heard them say heavy in the past 10 years? Fu Wei opened his mouth. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything. A faint pink color appeared on his handsome face. Xiaodong stopped before going too far. She turned around and said, "Hurry up and keep up. We still have a lot of things to do." Fu Wei was stunned. He quickly chased after her. "I'm coming, sis." "Wait for me." The two of them walked out of the department store one after the other and brushed past Xia Jinxing. Xiaodong looked straight ahead and didn't notice Xia Jinxing. Xia Jinxing did notice them, but he was too embarrassed to call out to Xiaodong. At the same time, he was puzzled. Why did the young man behind her call her sis? Xiaodong stopped the BMW outside a hair salon. She looked sideways at Fu Wei. "Get out of the car." Fu Wei followed Xiaodong into the hair salon. An attendant immediately came up to them. "How may I help you?" Xiaodong looked at Fu Wei and said, "Miss, please design a hairstyle for him and dye his hair black." Fu Wei said anxiously, "Wait, sis. I don't want to dye it black." Xiaodong raised her hand and knocked on his head. "You look like a delinquent now. You have to change your image." "But no buts." Xiaodong threatened him with her eyes. He finally shut up and pouted. The attendant smiled. Do you have a familiar hairstylist? Xiaodong said no. Arrange for your head hairstylist. Okay, this way, please. Xiaodong sat in the waiting room, flipping through the magazine in her hand. 2 hours later, Fu Wei's hairstyle was finally done. When he appeared in front of her, she almost couldn't believe her eyes. Ad, Xinwu 799. Chapter 347. Fu Wei was now wearing a white shirt and black trousers. His refreshing black hair was suffused with a rich luster, and his irregularly cut bangs were slanted to one side. It was very well-groomed, making his handsome face look even more delicate and handsome, and also very capable and experienced. Xiaodong smiled with satisfaction. She walked in front of him and reached out her hand to his ear. He quickly covered his ear. Sis, my dear sister, I'm only left with this personality thing. Leave it for me. Don't even think about it. Xiaodong pried his fingers away, took off the earring on his ear, and threw it into the trash can. Fu Wei looked sad and stared at the trash can. All right, look at you. Xiaodong pushed his shoulder. Look at yourself in the mirror. Fu Wei turned around and looked at himself in the mirror. He was in a suit and had a handsome hairstyle. However, the expression on his face and his body movements were too ugly. He looked like a hooligan who wore the wrong clothes. Raise your head, chest, stomach, and butt. Xiaodong used a magazine to pat the corresponding parts of his body. She said in a serious voice, Put away that wretched expression of yours. From today onwards, you're a white-collar worker. White-collar? This word was very distant and unfamiliar to Fu Wei. He didn't know why, but when he looked at himself in the mirror, he suddenly had a strange feeling. He subconsciously followed Xiaodong's action of patting him with the magazine and raised his head. He gradually restrained the expression on his face and imitated the white-collar workers on the street. The corners of his lips curled up slightly, revealing a trace of a smile. The image in the mirror immediately changed. Although his face still had a childish look, he was handsome, tall, and cultured. Very good. Xiaodong didn't hide her admiration for him and patted his shoulder. That's how it should be. Wei, congratulations on taking the first step. Remember, a person's image is very important because the first impression others have of you starts from your clothes and appearance. Clothes not only leave a sense of beauty, but also reflect your personal temperament, character, and inner world. Appropriate speech and generous behavior are the second step. Come, I'll take you to a place. Fu Wei had a magical feeling as if he had stepped into another world. This was the first time he felt that when he put on clothes, his words and actions would involuntarily lean towards that kind of image. Xiaodong brought him to an etiquette training center. The instructor was called Belinda. When Xiaodong was the editor-in-chief of Glamour magazine, she had done an exclusive interview with Belinda, so the two of them had a private relationship. Belinda was a tall and charming lady with a head of beautiful brown curly hair. She enthusiastically stretched out her arms and hugged Xiaodong, exclaiming happily, Wow, Xiaodong, what brings you here? Xiaodong smiled. Belinda, your career is getting better and better. Congratulations. Belinda shrugged and teased. How can they compare to you? Your husband is handsome and rich, and your children are cute and obedient. You're the envy of all women. You're just teasing me. Xiaodong hurriedly pulled Fu Wei over and said, Belinda, this is my brother, Fu Wei. He just stepped into society. Please teach him some basic etiquette. Sure, no problem. You know that my classes last a week. Does your brother have time? Yes. Xiaodong turned to Fu Wei. Wait, talk to Belinda first. Belinda stretched out her right hand and smiled. Hello, Fu Wei. I'm the etiquette teacher, Belinda. Fu Wei awkwardly stretched out his right hand and shook hers. He murmured, Hello, teacher. Belinda's smile widened, and she said affectionately, Just call me Belinda. I'll call you Wei. Fu Wei's fair face was tinged with a blush. Belinda's etiquette class started at 7 p.m. every day and lasted for an hour and a half for 7 days. Xiaodong repeatedly reminded Fu Wei to go to Belinda's studio for training starting tomorrow after work. After coming out of the studio, the fearless Fu Wei doubted himself for the first time. He leaned against the passenger seat dejectedly. Xiaodong glanced at him. "What's wrong?" Fu Wei mumbled, "I don't know if I can do it well." Xiaodong knocked on his head. "Cheer up. You haven't even started working hard, and you're already discouraged? Think about the 100,000 yuan you owe. Do you want them to chop off your hands?" Fu Wei quivered. "Of course not. That's good. Report to the company tomorrow and work hard." Fu Wei pursed his lips. "Got it." Xiaodong looked at her watch. It was actually dinner time. She glanced at the street outside the window and said, "What do you like to eat? Let's eat together." Fu Wei chuckled. "Century brocade." Xiaodong rolled her eyes. "You haven't even started earning money, and you're already so extravagant." "Western food stingy," Xiaodong thought for a while and asked, "Ah Wei, do you think your brother-in-law is rich?" At the mention of this, Fu Wei immediately perked up. His eyes shone with a green light. "Of course he's rich. Isn't he number one on the rich list of City A? Sis, can I go directly to brother-in-law's company?" Xiaodong said earnestly, "Ah Wei, do you know how your brother-in-law got his achievements and status today?" Fu Wei pursed his lips. "It's because of his father. Tell me, why don't I have a rich father?" Xiaodong's mouth twitched. She had the urge to throw this kid out of the car window. She coughed and said, "When your brother-in-law founded Shanghao Group, he didn't rely on his family. He relied on his own abilities." Fu Wei's eyes widened. "You're lying. I don't believe you." "You don't believe me? Then I'll tell you." Xiaodong started to talk about how Bailey Han started to learn martial arts when he was 4 years old. She talked about how he was a good student since he was a child. His family was strict. In order to improve himself, he never played games like other children. When she talked about how Bailey Han was thrown on an isolated island at the age of 16 to train for his coming-of-age ceremony, the car arrived at a Western restaurant. She stopped the car and said, "We're here. Get out of the car. I'll tell you when we eat." In the restaurant, Xiaodong continued the topic from before and said, "When your brother-in-law was 20 years old, he had already obtained a doctorate from Harvard Business School. After returning to China, he refused to inherit his family's company. He pulled in investors himself and founded Shanghao Group." Fu Wei listened with great interest. From time to time, he would show a surprised expression. Finally, he sighed and concluded, although brother-in-law didn't rely on his family to achieve what he has today, his family created a good environment for him. This is also inseparable from his success. In the end, it's better to be born in a rich family. After saying that, he added enviously, "If only I was born in a rich family." Xiaodong had the urge to smash the bowl. She clenched her hands tightly and suppressed the impulse. She said in a deep voice, "Wei, although your living environment is not as good as your brother-in-law's, your parents have never mistreated you in terms of living and education. It's you who didn't learn well. Even dropping out of school was your own idea. Why don't you know how to reflect on yourself?" Fu Wei wanted to refute, but Xiaodong beat him to it. She said, "The reason why your brother-in-law is successful is that he is good at learning and improving his ability. There's a saying that knowledge can change one's fate. Don't tell me that you haven't heard of it." Fu Wei's lips moved. He snorted and said angrily, "Sis, don't preach to me. It's useless to say so much to me." Xiaodong gritted her teeth and struggled. Finally, she glared at him and pushed her plate in front of him. "You eat it all. I've lost my appetite because of you." "Okay." Fu Wei didn't feel guilty at all. He smiled and moved the steak for her plate to his. Xiaodong looked at his greasy mouth and couldn't help but shake her head. After dinner, he received a call. It was as if he had been injected with chicken blood. He waved at Xiaodong and said, "Sis, I'm leaving. I have something to do." Xiaodong grabbed his collar. "Where are you going?" Although he deliberately lowered his voice when he answered the call, she still heard him say, "Wait for me. I'll be right there." Fu Wei's face was bitter. "Sis, my friend asked me out to play. Let go of me." "No. From today onwards, you have to cut ties with those bad friends of yours. If you hang around with them, you'll never be able to walk the right path." Xiaodong snatched the phone from his hand without giving him a chance to explain. He searched through the call log for the number he had just received and dialed it. Sis, give me back my phone." Fu Wei rushed over to snatch the phone. Xiaodong quickly dodged and nimbly avoided him. "Hey, Wei, didn't I say we were at the rave bar? Why are you calling again?" It was extremely noisy on the other end of the line. Xiaodong said coldly, "Wei won't be going over. If you have any problems in the future, don't look for him." "Hey, who are you? You're so arrogant. I'm his guardian. Don't harass him in the future." After Xiaodong said this, she didn't wait for the other party to reply. She hung up the phone and turned it off. She took out the SIM card from the phone and casually put it in her handbag. Her actions were done smoothly. Fu Wei was stunned for a second before he reacted. He shouted angrily, "Xiaodong, who allowed you to do this? Hurry up and give me back my phone and SIM card." Xiaodong suddenly turned her head and stared at him with a sharp gaze. She exuded a cold aura. Under her fierce gaze, Fu Wei actually felt uneasy. He pursed his lips and deliberately raised his chin. He said in a rough voice, "What are you looking at? Hurry up and give me back my things." Xiaodong's fingers were trembling. She really wanted to teach this useless bastard of a lesson. However, looking at his childish face, she held back. She approached him step by step. A strong pressure pressed down on him. His legs retreated without leaving a trace. She suddenly grabbed his arm and dragged him out of the Western restaurant under everyone's surprised and curious gazes. She placed him harshly into the BMW. "Attention, Shinwu 799. Chapter 348. Xiaodong pursed her lips and started the car expressionlessly. Fu Wei looked at her ashen face and swallowed his saliva. His dark eyes turned slightly and a big smile appeared on his face. He laughed and said, "Sister, where are we going now?" Xiaodong looked straight ahead and ignored his flattery. She said coldly, "Where do you live? Do you want to take me home?" "No need, sis. I can go back by myself. I've already troubled you enough today," Fu Wei said as he peeked at her expression. Xiaodong pursed her lips and said coldly, "Tell me the address." "Okay," Fu Wei reluctantly said the name of a place. As Xiaodong drove, she called Bailey Han and told him that she had something to do and would be back later. Bailey Han was on the way back to the old mansion. Knowing that she was with Fu Wei, he asked, "Where are you? I'll come over and find you." "No need. I'll send our way home and be back soon." "Okay then. Be careful on the road." "Okay, got it." Xiaodong ended the call. Fu Wei smiled slyly. "Sis, it's brother-in-law, right? Brother-in-law is so good to you." She glanced at him and smiled. Her tone softened. "Wei, from tomorrow onwards, work hard. Mom and Dad are old. Don't make them worry, okay?" Fu Wei was slightly startled. He turned his head away as if he was avoiding something. He looked out of the window at the hurried pedestrians on the street and remained silent. The smile on Xiaodong's face faded. She didn't say anything and drove to the destination in silence. This was an old city district. The streets were narrow, and the houses were low and old. There were many food stalls and food stalls on the roadside. Many young men with tattoos on their bodies were sitting at the stalls on the roadside, drinking and playing finger-guessing games with their companions. Their shouts and curses were intertwined together. The BMW stopped by the roadside and attracted the attention of many delinquents with dyed hair. Xiaodong didn't seem to notice their strange looks. She calmly got out of the car and locked it. She said to Fu Wei, "Let's go. Lead the way." "Those things." Fu Wei glanced at the trunk. Xiaodong said indifferently, "No hurry." Fu Wei didn't understand what she was up to. He scratched his head and led her into a dark alley. He walked in front and reminded her, "Sis, be careful. The road here isn't easy to walk on." Xiaodong nodded and followed him forward. They stopped in front of a small 3-story building. The building was very old and looked quite old. The two of them climbed up to the 3rd floor. Fu Wei took out the key and opened the door. After he went in, he blocked Xiaodong at the door and chuckled. "Sister, the room is very messy. Why don't you not come in?" Xiaodong's ears were sharp. She could already hear the sounds of a man and a woman coming from inside. Her face instantly turned ugly. She lowered her voice and asked, "What's going on?" Fu Wei scratched his head awkwardly. It's my friend and his girlfriend. They have nowhere to go, So they're at my place. Xiaodong was so angry that she almost vomited blood. She couldn't imagine what he was thinking about when he was at the age where he was curious about women. Her face was cold. She poked his forehead with her finger and gritted her teeth. Did you play with women? No, I really didn't. Fu Wei hurriedly shook his head, afraid that she wouldn't believe him. He even raised his hand and swore. I swear, I really didn't. Xiaodong's face looked better. She pulled him over and pushed him out of the door. She held the door with her right hand and deliberately slammed the door with a loud bang. Fu Wei hurriedly pulled her back. Sis, what are you doing? Xiaodong said indifferently, to remind them that someone is coming. She lifted her chin. You turn around. He looked pitiful. Why don't we wait a little longer? Xiaodong glared at him and said sternly, Turn around. He hurriedly turned around and heard her footsteps as she walked into the room. It was a standalone bedroom with a bathroom. It was less than 10 square meters. Clothes and pants were strewn all over the floor. The shabby sofa was filled with junk. Most importantly, there were two people lying on the double bed, a man and a woman. Both of them were wrapped in blankets. They poked their heads out and stared at Xiaodong. Obviously, they had heard the conversation between Xiaodong and her brother at the door. The man said uncomfortably, Sis, don't be angry. We'll leave immediately. Xiaodong said indifferently, You don't have to leave. Wrap yourself in blankets and don't come out. I'll wait, come in. Fu Wei hurriedly ran in and stood behind Xiaodong. He winked at the couple on the bed with a gloomy face. Xiaodong said expressionlessly, I'll wait. Pack up your valuables and come with me. Fu Wei, who was making eye contact with his buddy on the bed, was stunned when he heard this. Where are we going with you? Moving, Xiaodong said indifferently. She raised her hand and looked at her watch. I'll give you 5 minutes. Hurry up. I'll wait for you at the door. I'm not moving. Although his little house was not in good condition, it was in a good location. There were places to eat, drink, and play when he went out. Stop talking nonsense. You don't have a right to say no. Xiaodong stared at him coldly. You still have 4.5 minutes. Fu Wei was scolded by her in front of his friends. He felt embarrassed and said unhappily, I don't want you to care. I'm not moving. Xiaodong nodded. Okay, then you can stay here. You don't have to go to work tomorrow. Let the people at the casino chop off your hands. After she finished speaking, she walked out without looking at him. Fu Wei hurriedly grabbed her arm and squeezed out a smile. Sis, don't be rash. I'm just joking. Wait for me. I'll be out soon. Xiaodong replied indifferently with an and walked out of the door without looking back. As soon as she left, Fu Wei's face fell. He looked as if the sky had fallen. The buddy who was nestled under the blanket said in a low voice, Ah Wei, your sister is so fierce. She's like a tigress. Fu Wei put a finger to his lips and shushed him. He lowered his voice and said, Stop making a fuss. You're King killing me. You didn't even tell me you were coming. Xiaodong's calm voice drifted from outside the door. For minutes. Hey, I'll be done soon. Fu Wei threw the buddy on the bed and rushed to the wardrobe. He dug out a handbag and stuffed his clothes into it. He then rushed to the toilet and stuffed all his toiletries into the bag. Before he left, he waved at the couple on the bed. He put his right hand to his ear and gestured for them to call again. Xiaodong drove him to a good hotel near her apartment and paid for a room for 10 days in advance. Xiaodong opened the trunk and helped him carry the shopping bags into the room. She reminded him, Stay here for a few days. You can move in with Mom and Dad after my apartment is renovated. Fu Wei nodded. Okay, got it. Xiaodong took out more than 10 bills from her wallet and handed them to him. This money is enough for you to use for 10 days. Don't spend it recklessly. He took the money with a smile. Thank you, sis. I'm leaving. Rest early. Don't be late for tomorrow's report. I know. I won't be late. He waved at her cheerfully. Take care, sis. Be careful on the road. After Xiaodong went downstairs, she was not in a hurry to leave. She sat in the car and waited for more than 10 minutes. From afar, she saw the lights in Fu Wei's room go out. 2 minutes later, he walked out of the hotel casually, wearing a pair of ripped jeans and a black skull-shaped t-shirt. He put his hands in his trouser pockets. She sneered. She knew that he would not be so honest. Fu Wei was happy that he had finally gotten rid of his nagging tigress sister. He whistled and swaggered down the street, planning to meet up with his friends at the bar. All right, he had to get a new SIM card. He touched the phone in his trouser pocket that did not have a SIM card. The corners of his lips curled up triumphantly. Suddenly, his vision blurred. A familiar figure stood in front of him, exuding a cold aura. He blinked and waved with a smile. Hey, sis, why aren't you home yet? Xia Dong crossed her arms and sneered. If I'm home, how would I know that you're just brushing me off? He scratched his head and chuckled. Sis, don't misunderstand. I just went out to buy a pack of cigarettes. Buy cigarettes? Do you need a dress like this to buy cigarettes? Xia Dong unceremoniously pulled off the earring on his ear and said coldly, Now, immediately, get back to your room. Sis, I really want to buy cigarettes. Go back. Fu Wei, don't make me repeat myself. Xia Dong's sharp eyes stared at him with a chilling gaze. Okay. Fu Wei hung his head and slowly went upstairs. Xia Dong watched his back disappear at the top of the stairs before returning to the car. Bailey Han called. Honey, why aren't you back yet? Didn't things go well? Xia Dong put one hand on her forehead and said helplessly, Ah Wei, it's really... She explained the situation briefly. I'm worried that he'll go out and fool around again after I left. Bailey Han paused and said, The Dragon Gang has a branch nearby. I'll send someone to watch Ah Wei. Okay, thank you, hubby. Bailey Han said gently, Don't worry. Come back quickly and drive carefully. Okay, got it. She smiled and her gloomy mood was swept away. Just as Xia Dong had expected, half an hour after she left, Fu Wei couldn't hold back his restless heart and rushed downstairs. However, before he could step out of the hotel, a cold-faced man in a black suit stopped him and said coldly, Young Master Fu, please go back. Who are you? Why are you stopping me? The man said coldly, I was sent by young madam to watch you. Young Master Fu, you can go back to your room. F***CK, what is this? Fu Wei grabbed his hair in frustration and went upstairs helplessly. It seemed that his plan to have fun tonight was ruined. Ad. Honsha 866. Chapter 349. The sales manager, Deng Yuexiang, knew that Fu Wei was Bailey Han's brother-in-law, but Bailey Han had already told him not to give Fu Wei any special treatment. He was to be treated as a newcomer in the sales department and to be trained as he should be. Therefore, when Fu Wei was late on his first day of work, Deng Yuexiang criticized him without hesitation and then told him what his job was and then arranged a week of training for him. A week later, Fu Wei, who knew nothing about software and sales, finally grasped some knowledge and was barely able to start work. Deng Yuexiang threw him a brochure of all the hotels in a city and said, These are your target customers. Your task is to persuade them to buy our company's hotel management software. For every software sold, you can get a 10% commission. Fu Wei calculated silently in his heart. A software package cost more than 50,000 yuan, and a 10% commission would be more than 5,000 yuan. Every month, as long as he sold 8 software packages, he could easily save enough money to pay off his gambling debts. If he sold a few more software packages every month, he could live a well-off life. Perhaps because of his sales prowess, he could even be promoted, get a raise, become a general manager, become a CEO, marry a beautiful woman, and climb to the pinnacle of life. Just thinking about it makes me excited. Fu Wei's blood was boiling. He hugged the thick stack of documents and began to daydream. However, after only 3 days, he was discouraged and had the idea of retreating. Today, the family moved. His parents moved from Xiaoshui village to Xia Dong's apartment. After Fu Wei got off work, he also moved from the hotel to the apartment under the surveillance of the bodyguards. Bailey Han ordered a table of dishes in the hotel, especially to celebrate their housewarming. The whole family was very excited, except for Fu Wei, who was not in high spirits and hung his head gloomily. This was the first official meeting between Bailey Han and Fu Wei. He glanced at Fu Wei, who was drowning his sorrows in alcohol without batting an eyelid. The corners of his lips curled up slightly. Wei, you've been working for 10 days. Fu Wei looked up as if he had been injected with chicken blood and said excitedly, Brother-in-law, I don't think sales is suitable for me. Can you arrange a job for me? I want something easy and with a high salary. Xia Dong pretended not to hear anything and lowered her head to remove the fish bones for Xiao Guai. She knew that Bailey Han must have a way to subdue Wei. When Fu Chenghai and Xia Ling heard this, their faces turned red. Fu Chenghai scolded, Wei, don't talk nonsense. You're doing a good job now. Why change jobs? Bailey Han's expression didn't change. He had a gentle smile on his face. Dad, don't worry. Let's hear what Wei has to say first. Wei, why do you think that sales isn't suitable for you? It's still my brother-in-law who understands me. Fu Wei first praised Bailey Han, then said, Brother-in-law, I don't know anything about software. When I was introducing it to the client, I was stumped by a few questions. Also, the people in charge of those hotels don't care about the sales staff at all. I went to a few hotels and was chased out. Bailey Han smiled faintly. Have you ever thought about where the problem lies? Fu Wei said nonchalantly, those people are snobs. They look down on the sales staff. Also, those software are too hard to sell. Bailey Han's lips curled up slightly. His tone was calm, but his eyes were stern. The people who are looked down on are not the sales staff, but those who have no confidence and no ability. If you think that software is hard to sell, then do you know how many sets of software the ace of your sales department can sell every month? How many sets? Fu Wei's eyes were stubborn. He was obviously not convinced. Bailey Han stared into his eyes and said meaningfully, on average, 2 sets a day. His monthly sales commission is a few $100,000. His name is Deng Yuexiang. Manager Deng. Fu Wei couldn't believe it. He's already a manager. Does he still need to go out and sell products? Bailey Han smiled. Indeed, he doesn't need to. Your boss originally wanted to promote him to the position of deputy general manager, but he declined and insisted on staying in the sales department because he felt that the sales department was the best place to show off his skills. The sales staff are like the vanguard. Without them, the company's products can't be sold. Who will create profits for the company? Do you still think that the sales staff is not important? His words were neither hurried nor slow. There was no hint of criticism in his tone, but it gently hit Fu Wei's heart. He quietly clenched his fingers. He didn't dare to look at Bailey Han's wise and deep eyes. Xiao, he suddenly interrupted. Little uncle, the richest man in Hong Kong, also made his fortune in sales. Xiao Bao added, and the richest man in Las Vegas, Adelson. He started delivering newspapers when he was 12 years old. Xiao Guai blinked her beautiful big eyes and said in a childish voice, Little uncle, you will also become the richest man. Xiao Guai's innocent and childish words made everyone laugh. Xiao Guai pouted. Don't laugh. I'm serious. Little uncle, you have to work hard. When you make money, you have to buy me candy. Everyone laughed, even louder. Fu Wei, who was sitting beside her, was also amused by her cute appearance. He reached out to stroke her soft hair and said with a smile, Okay, I will definitely work hard so that I can earn money to buy sweets for little Guai. After finishing the meal, Fu Wei temporarily dismissed the idea of retreating. When they went downstairs, Xia Dong was holding Xia Ling's arm. The mother and daughter chatted and laughed intimately. Xiao Yi and Xiao Bao followed behind them. Bailey Han held Xiao Guai's hand and walked to the back with Fu Qinghai and his son. The family walked out of the hotel, talking and laughing. Bailey Han let go of Xiao Guai's little hand and said with a smile, Dad, Mom, wait here for a moment. I'll go get the car. Okay, Han. Slow down. There's no hurry. Xia Ling smiled kindly. Bailey Han acknowledged and walked with steady steps to the parking lot. It was already past 8 o'clock in the evening, and the streets were brightly lit. They happened to be standing at the entrance of the hotel, and the bright lights poured down on them. Xia Jinsheng, who was walking slowly toward the hotel, saw them at a glance and recognized Xia Dong and the children. Xia Dong and the others were chatting and didn't notice Xia Jinsheng. Xia Jinsheng was only 5 or 6 meters away from them. He hesitated for a moment, but still walked towards the entrance of the hotel. Xiao Guai was the first to notice Xia Jinxing. She ran to Xia Dong's side and tugged at her clothes. "Mommy, look, it's Grandpa." Everyone raised their heads and looked in the direction Xiao Guai was pointing. The atmosphere suddenly became heavy. Xia Dong held on to Xia Ling's arm and could clearly feel her mother's body tremble. Fu Qinghai's expression also turned ugly. Even Fu Wei, who had always been mischievous, sensed that something was wrong and wiped the sloppy smile off his face. Xia Jinxing noticed that everyone was staring at him and felt a little awkward. He braced himself and walked over to Xia Dong and the others. He smiled and said, Xia, you're having dinner here. Who are these people?" His gaze swept over Xia Ling, Fu Qinghai, and the others before finally landing on Fu Wei. He still remembered this young man. He was the one who had called Xia Dong sis at the mall. Xia Ling held Xia Dong's hand tightly. She secretly patted the back of her mother's hand to comfort her. She looked at Xia Jinxing and said calmly, "They're my friends. It has nothing to do with you." Xia Jinxing felt a little awkward and forced a smile. "I'm here for a class reunion. I'll be upstairs. I'll be leaving first." Xia Dong nodded calmly. He glanced at Xia Ling and Fu Qinghai again. Strange, their expressions were very stiff, especially that old woman. The way she looked at him made his hair stand on end. Xia Jinxing's heart was filled with doubts as he walked towards the hotel. Fu Wei watched Xia Jinxing walk away and snorted disdainfully. "Sis, is that your father?" Xia Ling glared at him. "Keep your voice down. What are you afraid of? Are you afraid that he'll recognize you?" Fu Wei shrugged indifferently. "You're all old now. How could he recognize you so easily?" Even so, Xia Ling still had lingering fears. She sighed. If possible, she really didn't want to see that man again for the rest of her life. Xia Dong comforted her in a low voice. Just then, Bailey Han drove the car over. The family pretended that nothing had happened and got into the car to go home. As for Xia Jinxing, he sat in the middle of a group of old classmates and listened to everyone flattering and teasing each other. He was still puzzled. That old woman Xia Dong was holding on to, that old woman and the man behind them seemed familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen them before. The former class monitor was now the boss of a private enterprise. Seeing that Xia Jinxing was silent, he patted him on the shoulder and smiled. "Jinxing, we're old classmates. We haven't seen each other for decades. Why are you just sitting there without saying anything?" Someone teased, "Jinxing, don't tell me you're thinking about your wife." Everyone burst into laughter. Xia Jinxing smiled awkwardly. "Don't talk nonsense." "We're not talking nonsense. Your wife is a famous person in a city. She's the Iron Lady of the business world. Not only is she capable, she's also beautiful. You're really lucky to be able to marry her." Xia Jinxing pursed his lips and didn't reply. The class monitor gossiped. "I'm curious. What does Su Morong see in you? She clearly knows that you have a wife, but she's still following you wholeheartedly. Speaking of which, you even let Xia Ling down back then." Xia Jinxing's expression became uglier and uglier. His hands clenched into fists. The class monitor, sitting beside him, was the first to notice his abnormality. He quickly said, "Let's not talk about this anymore. Let's go sing." The others knew that they had stirred up trouble and quickly agreed. "Okay," Xia Jinxing stood up and said in a low voice, "You guys go ahead. I still have something to do. I'll go back first." "Jinxing, we haven't gathered for a long time. Let's go together, okay? You sang well back then and charmed many female classmates. I wonder how your voice is now. Let's see." Ad, Shinwu 799. Chapter 350. Immediately, a female classmate expressed, "That's right, Jinxing. We girls like to hear you sing. Let's go together. Don't disappoint us." Xia Jinxing ignored everyone's urging and shook his head. "I really can't. My wife ordered me to be home before 10 p.m. every night. Next time, it's my treat." All right, let's not stop him. It's our fault for causing a conflict between husband and wife. Jinxing, you have to remember what you said just now. Next time, you'll be the host." The class monitor patted his shoulder. Xia Jinxing smiled. Okay, I'll remember. You guys have fun. He waved his hand and walked out of the private room. He closed the door, but didn't rush to leave. Instead, he let out a long sigh. In the private room, the class monitor complained to the classmate with the big mouth. Big head. Look at you. Of all things to bring up, you had to bring up Xiaoling. He must be feeling bad right now. I didn't do it on purpose. Xia Jinxing left the hotel and drove home. His mind was filled with Big Head's words. You let Xiaoling down. This sentence was like a curse, lingering in his mind and driving him crazy. When he got home, the whole villa was dark except for the lights in the living room. He leaned on the sofa dejectedly and called the servant. Madam isn't back yet? The servant replied, Madam went to a villa in the suburbs for a few days and hasn't been home recently. Before she left, she asked you to take good care of Mississippi. Su Xingchan was still in the hospital and his temper was getting weirder. Other than Su Murong, he didn't have a good attitude towards anyone. Xia Jinxing had a headache just thinking about his daughter. He waved his hand tiredly and signaled the servant to leave. In the empty room, there wasn't a trace of life. It was terrifyingly cold. He took a bottle of whiskey from the wine rack, took a wine glass, and twisted it into the bedroom. It wasn't his and Su Murong's bedroom. It was his private room. They had been separated for a long time. Ever since Su Xingchan found out that he had hidden the photos of Xia Ling and her mother in a compartment of his desk 6 years ago, he no longer dared to place the photos in his study. Instead, he hid them in his bedroom. From the closet, he found the photo that he had treasured for many years and held it tightly to his chest. He poured a full glass of wine and drank it in one gulp. The bitter and spicy taste stimulated his taste buds and his nasal cavity. Tears welled up in his eyes. The wife and daughter in the photo were smiling peacefully. At that time, they were so happy. If Su Murong had not appeared, they would have continued to be happy. Xia Jinxing burst into laughter as tears rolled down his cheeks. He pounded his chest with his left hand and repeatedly said, I'm sorry. He would never forget the fire 20 years ago. That fire had not only burned Xia Ling to death, it had also destroyed his entire heart. I don't know how many glasses of wine. Xia Jinxing is completely drunk. He holds the photo and cries loudly. For decades, he has been suppressing his feelings. Now, he finally vents them out and can't stop. He was so drunk that the next morning, he missed his alarm and his morning classes. He slept until noon and woke up with a splitting headache from the hangover. The bed was a mess and there were vomit marks on the floor. The air was filled with the stench of alcohol and filth. He almost couldn't help but vomit again. He quickly opened the window to let in some fresh air. Before calling the servants to clean up the room, Xia Jinxing found the photos of Xia Ling and her mother on the bed. He planned to hide the photos, but he reluctantly looked at their faces and then put the photos in the bottom drawer of the cabinet. Just as he stood up and was about to ask the servants to clean up the room, a pair of eyes suddenly flashed in his mind. It was a pair of eyes filled with hatred. It was the gaze she had given him when he had divorced Xia Ling. Xia Ling had knelt in front of him and begged him, but he had left without hesitation. Her eyes, which were filled with resentment, gradually overlapped with the eyes of the old woman she saw last night. His body suddenly froze. His face was pale and his heart was thumping. He looked like he was in a daze. He muttered to himself, No, that's impossible. She was clearly burned to death. No, her body was not found in the fire. If it wasn't her, why was Xia so close to her? Who was that man? He looked so familiar. I must have seen him somewhere. What's going on? What's going on? Is she really not dead? Xia Jinxing was almost driven crazy by the thoughts in his mind. He hit his head with both hands and squatted on the floor. One moment he laughed, the next he cried. The servants who came upstairs to clean were shocked to see him like this. They quickly ran up to help him. Sir, what's wrong? Are you okay? Tell me, is she dead or not? Xia Jinxing suddenly grabbed the servant's arm. His eyes were emitting a fierce light. His expression was fierce and scary. Sir, wake up. The servant was so scared that her face was pale. She screamed, Someone come quickly. Sir has gone crazy. Xia Jinxing was stimulated by her screams. His mind gradually cleared up. He pushed her away and ran into the bathroom. He closed the door tightly and splashed his face and head with cold water. Sir, are you okay?" The butler heard the commotion and rushed over. He knocked on the bathroom door. Xia Jinxing looked at himself in the mirror. He took a deep breath and said, "I'm fine." The butler and servants were relieved. Xia Jinxing finished washing up and wiped his face. He came out of the bathroom and said in a low voice, "I just had a nightmare. Nothing happened." Okay, we understand." The others nodded quickly. He nodded in satisfaction. "Clean up the room." He did not know that after he left and went to the study room, the maid quietly reported his madness to Su Murong, who was in the villa in the suburbs. At this time, Su Murong, wearing a sexy swimsuit, was lying on a white recliner, comfortably basking in the sun. In the swimming pool, a young and robust man was leisurely swimming with his upper body naked. Su Murong lazily said, "What did he say?" The maid whispered, "I only heard one sentence. He asked me, 'Tell me, is she dead or not?'" Su Murong's eyes slightly tightened. She lightly said, "The she in his words. Who is he referring to?" "Sir did not say. By the way, madam, Sir warned us that he only had a nightmare." "Okay, I know. If there's anything else, report to me." Su Murong cut off the call. Her distant gaze looked over the tall trees by the swimming pool to the horizon. "Is she dead or not? Who is she referring to?" The handsome man in the swimming pool stood up from the water. Water droplets slid down his muscular chest. His sexy Adam's apple bobbed up and down. Needless to say, it was very seductive. He draped a bath towel over his shoulders and slowly walked towards Su Murong. He bent over and kissed her on the cheek. There was a smile in his deep black eyes, and his voice was low and magnetic. "Baby, what are you thinking about?" Su Murong's hands hooked around his neck. She carefully looked at his face. His eyebrows were sharp and his nose was high. His facial features were similar to her godfather's. When he smiled, the similarity could reach up to 70 to 80%. The corner of her lips curled up slightly. She lightly said, "Nothing." The man leaned over and kissed her lips. His hands caressed her charming figure. She pushed his chest and lightly said, "Shen Ran, I'm not in the mood right now." "Okay." There was a hint of helplessness in Shun Ran's voice. He let go of her and sat on the chair beside her. He tilted his head and looked at her. "Darling, are you in a bad mood?" Su Murong supported her forehead with one hand. Her charming almond-shaped eyes flashed with a touch of sadness. "Do you think there's a need for my marriage to continue?" Shen Ran chuckled. "Darling, since you don't want that useless man anymore, just dump him and throw yourself into my arms. I wanted to be your husband for many years." Su Murong glanced at him and lightly said, "Aren't you afraid that people will say that you're living off a woman? Moreover, I'm 20 years older than you." Shen Ran's lips curled up into a frivolous smile. "So what? True love doesn't care about age. I'm living off a woman. There's no need to worry about people gossiping." Su Murong reached out and patted his young and handsome face. Her eyes were cold. "Don't forget that other than our physical relationship, we don't talk about feelings. I don't have feelings anymore." Shen Ran's expression darkened. He self-deprecatingly curved his lips. "I thought I was special." She used her fingers to trace his handsome features. Her tone was indifferent. "You're special because in my heart, you're another man's substitute. Shen Ran, don't forget your identity just because I dote on you." Shen Ran smiled bitterly. "Okay, I'll remember." Su Murong satisfactorily patted his cheek. "Okay, let's go in first. I want to be alone for a while." Shen Ran nodded. He stood up with a white bath towel draped over his shoulders. He turned and walked towards the villa. His shiny black hair covered his forehead and also covered the haze that flashed across his eyes. Xia Jinxing was excited by his shocking discovery. All the blood in his body was boiling. He wanted to find out the truth as soon as possible to confirm his thoughts. However, he didn't know where to start the investigation. After thinking for a long time, he decided to hire a private investigator. Xia Jinxing knew that Bailey Han was very powerful and often sent bodyguards to protect Xia. If the private investigator followed Xia, the bodyguards might find out and all his efforts would be in vain. Therefore, he asked the private investigator to secretly monitor Xia Yun's family. He guessed that if Xia Ling really didn't die, she would definitely contact her sister Xia Yun. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. The private investigator still didn't get any useful information. Xia Zhensheng, who was anxiously waiting, gradually lost his confidence. Maybe he was wrong. That old woman wasn't Xia Ling. His ex-wife, Xia Ling, had died in the fire. Just as his restless heart calmed down, the private investigator suddenly contacted him. Welfare Hongcha 866. Chapter 351. In a cafe, a man in a black suit and sunglasses was sitting by the window with a newspaper in his hand. He was reading it carefully. Xia Jinxing sat down opposite him and asked in a low voice, "Any news?" The man put down the newspaper, took out a stack of photos from his pocket, and placed them on the table. Xia Yin went to the Jiangnan Shuigan district yesterday. Take a look at the photos yourself. Xia Jinxing picked up the stack of photos and looked through them carefully. There were photos of Xia Yun shopping in the supermarket and photos of her walking into the Jiangnan Shuigan district. Then, there were a few photos of her talking and laughing with the old woman when she knocked on the door of a house. Xia Jinxing asked, "Did you hear their conversation?" "I heard it. I recorded it, but it was too far away and the recording was very noisy." The detective took a sip of coffee and said, "It was just a very normal conversation." Xia Yun said, "Sister, I'm here to see you," and the other woman smiled and welcomed her in. Xia Jinxing asked excitedly, "Did you hear it clearly? Did she really call her sister?" "Of course I heard it clearly. Although it was far away, the corridor was very quiet, and the voices were especially clear." Xia Jinxing's heart was beating violently in his chest. He couldn't help but tear up. His fingers clenched tightly in his palms, and his shoulders trembled rapidly. He didn't say a word for a long time. The detective frowned. "Mr. Xia, are you okay?" Xia Jinxing buried his head and waved his hand. "No, I'm fine. Where did Xia Yin go? What's the specific address?" "Jiangnan Shuigan District, Block A, Unit 3, Room 501. Xia Jinxing took the stack of photos out of the cafe and sat in the car in a daze for a long time. He looked at Xia Ling in the photos seriously. The scar on her face was so obvious, and her obviously disabled right leg must have been caused by the fire. He closed his eyes in heartache, not daring to look at it directly. After moving to the city, Xia Ling and Fu Chenghai lived a very comfortable life. Although they were not used to it at first, Xia Dong came to visit them every day, took them to the park for a walk, and let them learn to dance or sing with the old aunties in the park to pass the time. In addition, Fu Wei had finally started to work, so they were even happier and felt satisfied with their lives. However, they did not expect Xia Jinxing to suddenly appear and break their peaceful life. Xia Ling and Fu Chenghai were watching TV in the living room when they heard a knock on the door. Fu Chenghai thought it was Xia Dong, so he shouted, "Coming, coming," and ran open the door. Upon seeing the person outside the door, Fu Chenghai froze. "Old Fu, is Xia here? Why are you standing at the door?" Xia Ling's voice came from the living room. Fu Chenghai looked flustered. When Xia Jinxing heard Xia Ling's words, he was even more certain of her identity. He forced a smile. "Are you Fu Dehai?" Fu Chenghai's expression was ugly. "I'm not. You got the wrong person." He was about to close the door when Xia Jinxing suddenly blocked the door and said, "Dehai, don't hide it from me anymore. I know it's you. The person inside is Xia Ling. She's Xia's mother, right?" Fu Chenghai lowered his voice. "You're not welcome here. Leave." He pushed the door forcefully, but Xia Jinxing resisted with all his might. "Dehai, don't be like this. I want to talk to Xia Ling." Fu Chenghai's eyes were spitting fire. He lowered his voice and said, "What's there to talk about? You're already divorced. She's my wife now." The two old men pushed back and forth at the door, gritting their teeth as they competed. Xia Ling had already sensed that something was wrong. She asked curiously, "Dehai, who is it?" Fu Chenghai replied, "It's an insurance salesman." Xia Ling remembered that her son was also in the sales business, and her heart softened. She said, "Let him in. It's good to have a cup of tea." Xia Jinxing said loudly, "Xia Ling, it's me. I want to talk to you." Xia Ling's mind was blown. She was extremely familiar with this voice. It was this man who had broken her heart. She dragged her crippled leg and staggered to the door. She glared at Xia Jinxing. "I have nothing to talk to you about. Leave." "Xia Ling, I'm begging you. Let's talk." Xia Jinxing looked at her pleadingly. Go. Hurry up and leave. I don't want to see you." Xia Ling helped Fu Chenghai push Xia Jinxing out of the door and slammed it shut. Xia Jinxing did not give up. He banged on the door and shouted, "Xia Ling, open the door. Let's talk." Xia Ling and her husband wanted to ignore him and let him bang on the door. However, he was shouting so loudly that if the neighbors heard him, they might gossip. Xia Ling had no choice but to open the door. She stared at him expressionlessly. "Come in." In the living room, Xia Jinxing sat opposite Xia Ling and her husband. Facing their cold gazes, he forced a bitter smile. "Xia Ling, I want to talk to you alone." Fu Qinghai's face darkened. He was about to explode when Xia Ling patted the back of his hand and said, "Old Fu, go into the room first." But Fu Chenghai was worried that Xia Jinxing would hurt Xia Ling. Xia Ling smiled. "It's fine. Go in first." Fu Chenghai sighed and left the living room. "All right, it's just the two of us now. What do you want to say? Say it." Xia Ling's face was cold. Xia Jinxing looked pained. "Ling, your face and legs, were they damaged by the fire?" Xia Ling sneered. "Why? Do you think it's a pity that I didn't die in the fire?" "Ling, don't say that. I know you didn't die. I'm really happy." "You're happy? You can't wait for me to die. I won't be an eyesore to you." Xia Jinxing's eyes were filled with sorrow. "Ling, I know I've let you and Xia down, but I have my reasons." Xia Ling said angrily, "Reasons? You have your reasons." Miss Rich took a liking to you. For money and status, you abandoned your wife and daughter. You have your reasons? Xia Jinxing, aren't you afraid of being laughed at by others? Xia Jinxing hurriedly said, "Ling, I'm telling the truth. Listen to me." Xia Ling looked at him coldly. "Fine, tell me. I like to see what kind of lies you can come up with." Xia Jinxing gritted his teeth. His face was pale. "Years ago, I met Su Murong at an art exhibition. She said she fell in love with me at first sight and wanted to date me." Xia Ling interrupted him sternly. "That's enough. I don't want to know how you two hooked up. Xia Jinxing, get out of here right now." She pointed at the door angrily. "Ling, listen to me. I rejected her. I really did. I told her I had a wife and a daughter, but she didn't listen and continued to pester me. Once, I was eating with my colleagues at a restaurant. She was drunk and pestered me to send her home. I saw that it was dangerous for a woman to be drunk outside, so I kindly sent her home. Later, her servant poured me a glass of water. After I drank it, I lost consciousness." At this point, Xia Jinxing's expression was pained, embarrassed, and a little guilty. Later, I woke up in her bed. Her parents rushed in, saying that I had ruined her innocence and forcing me to marry her. Xia Ling raised her hand and slapped him. She said angrily, "Keep lying. Keep lying." "I'm not lying. I'm telling you the truth." Xia Jinxing looked embarrassed. That memory was a stain in his life. He had hidden it in the bottom of his heart and hadn't touched it for more than 20 years. Now that he had opened it up, he was the one who was heartbroken. Xia Ling said coldly, "Even if what you said was true, why didn't you tell me back then?" Xia Jinxing covered his face with his hands. He was too ashamed to face her. "I didn't know how to tell you. Also, her parents threatened me that I had to marry her. If I told anyone about this, not only would they sue the school and make me lose my job, they would also hurt you and Xia. Ling, I don't care if I lose my job, but I don't want them to hurt you and Xia. Tears rolled down from his fingers and dripped onto the coffee table, forming a puddle. Xia Ling looked at the embarrassed man in front of her expressionlessly. "You told me clearly back then that the person you loved was Su Murong. She could give you status and money, so I didn't believe a word you said. Xia Jinxing, leave. Don't disturb my life ever again." Xia Jinxing suddenly let go of his hands. His old face was covered with tears. He said painfully, "Aling, I'm telling you the truth. I had no choice but to lie to you back then." Xia Ling sneered. "Do you really think I'm stupid? Su Morong is a rich girl. Why would she degrade herself and marry you in such a lowly way? You're just a poor teacher. What do you have that's worth her doing that?" I don't know. Xia Jinxing had thought about this question for more than 20 years, but still couldn't figure it out. Because through these years of interaction, he could tell that Su Morong wasn't like what she said. She didn't fall in love with him at first sight and marry no one else but him. Xia Ling snorted. "That's right. I can't believe you could come up with such a logical lie. I'm telling the truth. Aling, why can't you believe me just this once?" Xia Dong looked defeated. "Actually, after we divorced, I secretly went to see you and our daughter. Later, Su Morong found out, and she even argued with me. She even threatened me that if I went to see you again, she would harm you, so I didn't dare to see you again. It wasn't until 5 years ago when I met Xia Xia that I found out that you set a fire and committed suicide. Aling, I'm sorry. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have become like this." "Stop." Xia Ling stretched out her hand and said, "Don't make yourself sound so important. I didn't commit suicide, and it wasn't because of you. The fire was just an accident." Xia Jinxing was stunned. An accident? According to what he had heard from his former neighbors, Xia Ling couldn't forget the pain of being abandoned by him. Her small restaurant had been destroyed, and her life had become too difficult. So, she abandoned her daughter and burned herself to death. Ad. Songshu 566. Chapter 352. Xia Ling's expression was cold. "Commit suicide for a heartless man like you? I'm not that stupid. There's no way I'd abandon Xia Xia." Xia Jinxing's face alternated between red and white. His mouth moved, and he was about to say something when there was a knock on the door. Xia Ling didn't even look at Xia Jinxing. She got up and limped to open the door. Xia Jinxing looked at her crippled right leg. His heart ached so much that he almost couldn't breathe. Xia Ling was a famous beauty back then. When they were dating, everyone praised them for being a perfect match. However, life was unpredictable. Their happy family was ruined by Su Morong. This time, it was Xia Dong standing at the door with a bag of fruit in her hand. Xia Ling forced a smile. "Xia Xia, you're here. Mom, what's wrong?" Xia Dong acutely sensed that something was wrong with her mother's mood, so she asked her as she changed her shoes. Xia Ling pursed her lips and said, "Xia Jinxing is here." Xia Dong froze in the middle of changing her shoes. She paused for a moment, straightened up, and said in a low voice, "He knows?" Xia Ling nodded. "He's still here. If you don't want to see him, you should avoid him for now." Xia Dong didn't look too good. "It's fine. I'm not the one in the wrong anyway." She had already planned to let go of the grudge and improve her relationship with Xia Jinxing. However, she couldn't control her emotions every time she thought of her mother's suffering. "Xia Xia." Xia Jinxing saw Xia Dong walking over with a cold expression and called out her name uneasily. Xia Dong ignored him and went straight to the kitchen. She sorted out the fruits and put them in the fridge before sitting next to her mother. She glanced at Xia Jinxing indifferently and said calmly, "What are you doing here?" Xia Jinxing's lips quivered a few times before he mumbled, "I'm here to talk to your mother." "What's there to talk about? You've been divorced for many years." Xia Dong's tone sounded extremely cold, as if she was facing a stranger. "Xia Xia, I had my reasons back then. Su Morong's parents forced me to marry her. Otherwise, they would hurt you and your mother. I had no choice." Xia Ling was furious. "Don't push all the blame onto me and Xia Xia. You're the one who's greedy. Aling, why don't you believe me?" Xia Jinxing felt helpless as he had returned to the starting point. Xia Ling said, "You don't have to say anymore. I won't believe anything you say. Just leave. In that case, I'll leave first. Let me know if you have any difficulties." Xia Jinxing understood her temper. She was stubborn and she was still angry. It was already good enough that she didn't chase him out with a broom. It was better for him to leave first and come back when she calmed down. After Xia Jinxing left, Xia Ling repeated what he said to Xia Dong. After Xia Dong heard it, her first reaction was the same as Xia Ling's. She thought that Xia Zhenxing was lying. However, after she thought about it logically, she felt that there was something suspicious. Mom, Xia Zhenxing said that after you divorced, he came to visit us. Su Murong found out about it and threatened to harm us if he ever came to visit us again. After that, your little restaurant was smashed. After that, you had an accident. If what Xia Zhenxing said is true, Xia Ling was shocked. You think that Su Murong was behind the smashing of the restaurant and the accident that happened to me? Xia Dong furrowed her brows. I'm only suspecting it. Of course, the prerequisite is that Xia Zhenxing is telling the truth. Xia Ling couldn't believe it as she shook her head. That's impossible. Xia Zhenxing has already divorced me. Even if he came to visit me, what could he do? Did Su Murong need to be so ruthless? I'm not a threat to her. Xia Dong sighed. Mom, you don't understand the Su family at all. To be able to give birth to a daughter like Su Xingqian as a mother, how could she be easy to deal with? I still feel that there's something suspicious about this matter. I must get to the bottom of it. Were her parents divorced, Xia Dong was only 6 or 7 years old. She didn't know much about what happened between them. The only thing she remembered was that her mother held her hand as they chased after Xia Zhenxing in the rain. Her mother accidentally fell and knelt in the rain as she cried. At that time, there was lightning and thunder. The young girl was so scared that she was left with the after effect of being afraid of thunder. She wasn't clear about the situation at that time, but her aunt and uncle definitely remembered it. Hence, after Xia Dong said goodbye to her mother, she went to her aunt's house. Coincidentally, Gao Mingyuan didn't have class and was at home. Xia Dong explained the reason for her visit. Xia Yun and Gao Mingyuan's expressions turned serious. Xia Yun said, back then, your parents were very close. However, one day, your father suddenly invited your mother to a small tea house. At the same time, Su Murong appeared. Your father said that he liked Su Murong and wanted to divorce your mother. Your mother refused, so Su Murong took out a stack of money to send your mother away. Your mother felt insulted and slapped Su Murong. Your father was really a jerk. He actually slapped your mother back. She was furious. She gritted her teeth and said, at that time, your mother wanted to get your father back. She even put down her pride and knelt down to beg him. However, he was still determined to divorce her. Your mother was heartbroken by him and had no choice but to divorce him. That's basically what happened back then. I think Xia Zhenxing was very willing to marry Su Murong. It didn't seem like he was forced at all. Speaking of that man, Xia Yun's face was full of disgust. Gao Mingyuan frowned and thought for a moment. He said, actually, there's one more thing that I haven't mentioned to anyone. Xia Yun was stunned. Is it about Xia Zhenxing? Gao Mingyuan said seriously, you can say that. Wife, do you still remember that I was there when Big Sister's restaurant was smashed? Xia Yun nodded. I remember. Don't keep me in suspense. Hurry up and tell me. That day, a group of gangsters inexplicably rushed in and smashed Big Sister's restaurant without saying anything. After smashing it, they ran away. At that time, I wanted to chase after them and send them to the police station. In the end, I chased them to a street and found that the leader of the gangsters took a stack of money from a woman. It seemed that the woman had bribed them. Xia Dong asked nervously, who is that woman? I only saw her side profile. She quickly got into a car and ran away. I can't confirm her identity, but I suspect that it's Su Murong. Xia Yun's expression changed. She said anxiously, why didn't you say such an important thing at that time? Gao Mingyuan smiled bitterly. When I called the police, I mentioned it to the police station. They said that they would investigate, but in the end, the investigation was left unsettled. As for that woman's identity, I only guessed. I didn't have any evidence, so I didn't mention it to you. Xia Dong frowned. If Su Murong really ordered people to smash the restaurant, then the fire could also be man-made. Xia Yun said angrily, if the fire was also caused by Su Murong, we can't let her go. We must let her be punished by the law. After all, the fire happened so many years ago. It was not easy to investigate clearly. Fortunately, with the help of Bailey Hahn, they were able to get the details of the incident from the police station. They also asked the bureau chief to send the most powerful criminal police to investigate this matter. Su family. Su Xingchen was discharged from the hospital. After nearly a year of plastic surgery, Su Xingchen's face looked a lot better. It was not as scary as before, but it would never be able to return to her previous appearance. She was now full of inferiority towards her face. Even at home, she wore a mask and hat, only revealing her eyes. In her room, other than Su Murong, no one was allowed to enter, not even Xia Zhenxing. As long as the servants looked at her, she would fly into a rage. No matter what was in her hand, she would not hesitate to throw it at them. Once, she threw a bowl of steaming hot chicken soup at a maid, causing blisters to appear on the maid's chest. The Su family's servants were submissive in front of her, silent like cicadas in winter. In fact, they were all silently praying that a month would pass quickly. Because Su Xingchen could only stay at home for a month before she was sent back to prison to serve her sentence. Su Murong had to worry about her daughter's situation while also taking care of the company's affairs. She had a headache. She rubbed her eyebrows and leaned on the sofa. The maid who followed her orders to monitor Xia Zhenxing walked to her side and respectfully said, "Madam, sir went to Jiangnan Shuyan district again today." Su Murong put down her hand and stared sharply at the maid. "Ah Xiao, did you find out who lives there?" "I found out. It's an old couple. The man is called Fu Qinghai and the woman is called Xia Ling." Su Murong's eyes suddenly widened. "What did you say?" "Xia Ling?" "Yes, that woman has a scar on her face and her right leg is disabled. In the process of my investigation, I found out that Xia Dong went to visit them. They seem to be very close." Close, of course they were close. Because Xia Ling was Xia Dong's mother. That fire actually did not burn her to death. That woman's life was really tough, just like that slut of a daughter of hers. Su Murong's face was gloomy. Her smooth and well-manicured fingertips fiercely dug into her palms. Her eyes were deep and cold. "Do you know what Sir did when he went to Jiangnan Shuyan district?" Ah Xiao shook her head. "I'm not sure. He only stayed there for half an hour. After he came out, his mood was a bit strange. He seemed to be very sad." Su Murong raised her hand and coldly said, "All right, let's not talk about him anymore." "Yes." Ah Xiao nodded respectfully. Su Murong was silent for a moment before slowly saying, "Ah Xiao, is there any news about Godfather?" "Not yet." Su Murong supported her forehead with one hand and tiredly waved her hand. "All right, you can leave first. Continue to inquire about Godfather." Not long after Ah Xiao left, Su Xingchen hugged a pillow and knocked on her door. "Mommy, I can't sleep. Can I sleep with you?" Su Murong's brows relaxed, and a smile appeared on her face. "Come in." The mother and daughter lay on the same bed. Su Xingchen curled up in Su Murong's arms and raised his head. He said pitifully, "Mommy, there's actually something that I've been hiding from you." Welfare, Xinwu 799. Chapter 353. Su Murong gently stroked her hair and said softly, "What's the matter?" Su Xingchen hugged her waist and said softly, "When I was in junior high school, I met a very, very good uncle. In the end, he took me as his goddaughter. I think he treats me better than Daddy. No matter what I want, he will help me get it. No matter what trouble I get into, he will help me settle it." Su Murong knew that she was talking about her godfather, Shangwan Ao. Her heart ached, and she hugged her tightly. Half a year ago, Godfather suddenly said that he was going abroad and said that he would contact me. But until now, he hasn't contacted me, and I can't contact him. "Mommy, do you think Godfather doesn't want me because I've become ugly?" Su Xingchen, who was as irritable as a fire-breathing dragon in front of the servants, was now like a little lamb. Her big, watery eyes stared pitifully at Su Murong. Su Murong's nose turned sour, and she almost couldn't hold back her tears. She bit her lip and forced a smile. "No, Xingchen, your godfather won't abandon you. Godfather gave me a special phone before. He said that as long as I use that phone, I can contact him no matter when or where. But now, I can't reach him even with the special phone. If it's not that he doesn't want me, then something must have happened. Su Xingqian's eyes were filled with panic. Mommy, will Godfather be okay? Su Morong didn't know how to answer her. Ever since that night when she and her godfather made love, her feelings for him showed signs of rekindling. She couldn't help but want to find him. But after a long time, she still couldn't find his whereabouts. In fact, Su Morong had the same worry. Her godfather had met with an accident. Mikakito had used Xingqian to force her godfather to show himself. After that, her godfather disappeared. She even suspected that his disappearance had something to do with Mikakito. Mommy? Su Xingqian tugged at her robe. Su Morong returned to her senses. She stroked her daughter's hair and said softly, "Baby, don't think about it anymore. Your godfather will be fine." She was comforting her daughter and herself. Okay. Su Xingqian threw herself into her arms. Su Morong stroked her hair from time to time and stared blankly at the chandelier on the ceiling. His thoughts wandered off somewhere. Su Xingqian said gloomily, "Mommy, I'll be sent back to prison in 10 days, right? Mommy, I don't want to go to prison. Can you help me?" Su Morong was helpless. "Xingqian, Mommy has no choice. Your sentence has long been decided." Su Xingqian, I don't want to leave you." Su Morong held her daughter's tear-stained face and said softly, "Xingqian, listen to me. As long as you behave well, Mommy can find someone to shorten your sentence. You just have to endure for 1 or 2 years. Trust me, baby." Su Xingqian burst into tears. 1 or 2 years. She didn't want to stay in prison for even 1 or 2 days. If only her godfather was here. He might be able to find a way to help her. "Godfather, where did he go?" Su Morong took a tissue from the bedside table and wiped her daughter's tears. She comforted her. "Baby, don't cry. Trust Mommy. You'll get better soon." Under her comfort, Su Xingqian gradually stopped sobbing. Su Morong stroked her daughter's hair. Her eyes were cold. Every time she saw her poor daughter, she hated Mikakito, Xia Dong, and the others to the core. No, she couldn't let Xia Dong and Mikakito live a good life so easily. She knew that she didn't have the ability to fight against Mikakito, but she could at least hurt him indirectly. As long as she hurt Xia Dong, it was the same as hurting Mikakito. Her eyes darted around. She was already planning how to deal with Xia Dong and Xia Ling. Axiu wasn't an ordinary maid. She was the last gift that Shangwan Ao gave to Su Morong when he abandoned Su Morong. Axiu was actually a very skilled assassin. She had the superb martial arts and excellent investigative skills of an assassin. Therefore, Su Morong trusted her to investigate Xia Dong's family. As the saying goes, know yourself and know your enemy. First, she had to know Xia Dong's Achilles heel. Only then could she deal with her better. Fu Wei was very excited. He finally got his first order. The client was a 3-star hotel. The hotel manager negotiated with him and decided to sign the order the next day. The next day, he dressed up in a shiny suit and leather shoes. He looked handsome and dashing. He carried his briefcase and walked confidently into the hotel with his chest puffed out. But half an hour later, he was thrown out by a few security guards with his face covered in dirt. There was no other reason. The hotel manager went back on his word. He said that he wasn't willing to buy their company's management software and had already signed an agreement with another software company. Fu Wei was very angry. He was young and impetuous. He fell out with the manager on the spot and scolded him. In the end, he was chased out by the security guards. Fu Wei stood outside the hotel building and pulled his tie angrily. He ignored the curious gazes of the crowd and cursed the hotel manager, who went back on his word. Suddenly, an arm patted him on the shoulder. "Hey, brother, what are you doing?" Fu Wei's cursing voice came to an abrupt stop. He impatiently turned around and saw the man in front of him. His face immediately revealed a smile. "I was wondering who it was." "So it's you." The man was wearing a pair of loose jeans and a black vest. The muscles on his arms bulged like a small hill. His hair was tied up to his neck, and he wore a thick gold necklace around his neck. He had thick eyebrows and a straight nose. His appearance was rough, and his whole body exuded a masculine aura. He looked at Fu Wei from head to toe. "Oh, Wei, you didn't contact your buddies for a while. You came here to do this?" His eyes stared at his briefcase. Fu Wei smiled embarrassedly. "Ah Chong, you know that I owe a lot of gambling debts. The sales are quick. I can't do anything about it." Ah Chong patted his shoulder and laughed heartily. "When you dress up like this, you really do look like something. How is it? Is work going well?" Fu Wei looked depressed. "Hey, don't mention it. I was just chased out. The manager of this hotel is a F** king bastard. We had already agreed to sign the order yesterday. Today, he suddenly went back on his word. I really want F** king beat him up. Forget it. Don't be depressed. How can work be so easy? We haven't seen each other in a long time. Let's go for a drink." Fu Wei scratched his head awkwardly. "I can't. I'm still working." Ah Chong slapped him on the back and stared at him with a pair of bell-like eyes. "Kid, do you dare to be a little more promising? What's work? Monkey and Snake Boy also want to see you. Let's go. Don't dawdle like a girl." Ah Chong was a head taller than Fu Wei, who was 7 meters tall. In addition, he had a strong and sturdy body. With his ape arm around his shoulder, he directly dragged him away. A flashy motorcycle was parked by the side of the road. Ah Chong picked up a helmet and handed it to him. He put on the other one and patted the back seat. "Hurry up and get on." Fu Wei was already unhappy that his client stood him up. In addition, his buddies were waiting for him. The last bit of hesitation in his heart dissipated. He got on a motorcycle and threw his work to the back of his mind. Fu Wei saw Monkey and Snake Boy in Ah Chong's rented apartment. Monkey was a very thin young man. He wore loose clothes on his body, as if a gust of wind could blow him away. Although he looked like this, among these people, he was the most ruthless. When he fought, he did not show any mercy. He had once stabbed someone to death with a knife. Snake Boy had dyed his hair in all kinds of colors and had shiny earrings on his ears. With a cigarette in his mouth, he punched Fu Wei's chest and said in a hooligan manner, "You're really something, you brat. You abandoned us brothers and went to be a white-collar worker." Fu Wei chuckled. "I had no other choice. At worst, I'll pay for tonight's expenses." Monkey jumped over and wrapped his arms around his neck. He laughed sinisterly. "You said it. We're going to Mr. Rich Boss tonight. The chicks there are the prettiest. Okay, Mr. Rich Boss it is. Let's go." Fu Wei calculated the money in his wallet. There was still a sum of money left from the last time his sister gave him. In addition to the money he recently swindled from his parents, it should be enough. Snake Boy tugged at his clothes and sneered. "You're going dressed like this? You'll make people laugh their heads off." Monkey dug out a few clothes from the pile of clothes on the sofa and threw them to him. "Change." Fu Wei sniffed in disgust. "Did you just change out of these?" Monkey punched him in annoyance. "Of course not. These are the clean clothes I just collected from the balcony." "Then I'm relieved. Mr. Rich Bar was the busiest and most chaotic bar in the red light district. There are all kinds of people here. As soon as they stepped in, they were infected by the shocking electronic music and noisy cheers inside. Their blood was boiling all over. On the stage, a group of beauties with heavy makeup and wearing bikinis were dancing a hot erotic dance with a white feather in their hands. From time to time, they would throw flirtatious glances at the men below the stage whose eyes were burning with fire. Their souls were about to be taken away. Monkey and Snake Boy drooled as they watched. They excitedly squeezed to the side of the stage, as if they had been injected with chicken blood. Fu Wei and Ah Chong found a seat on the second floor and ordered more than a dozen bottles of beer, one for each of them. The two clinked their bottles and drank. After having fun with the beauties, Monkey and Snake Boy happily climbed upstairs and sat heavily on the soft sofa. They picked up a bottle of wine and drank. Monkey and Ah Wei clinked their bottles and said, "Ah Wei, you're amazing now. You have a rich sister." Snake Boy's ears perked up. "I heard that your sister married the president of Shanghao Group. You could just ask them for money to pay off your gambling debts. Why do you have to go out and work yourself? It's so hard." Ah Wei's face was bitter. "You think I don't want to, but my sister and brother-in-law are stingy. They're stingy and said that they want me to be independent." Monkey rolled his eyes and laughed sinisterly. "Idiot, If they don't want to take the money, you have to find a way to make them bleed. Add Hongsha 866 that you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.